Chapter 971. Look! The audience surrounding the youngsters suddenly pointed at the big screen behind the youngster when they heard the high-pitched singing. At this time, the content above had changed. Rao Rong's side profile appeared on the screen along with his father, a hero who wanted to report corruption but was silenced. The photo looked old because Rao Rong was obviously different back then. He was very young. Pieces of evidence were displayed in front of everyone through the video. It was like a 2-minute film. But this movie actually existed in real life. It included the scene where Rao Rong was chased out by the club, and after his return, he didn't hesitate to offend the club in order to replace the worst player the investor had arranged. And what Rao Rong had said at the end of the competition. At this moment, it wasn't just the people in the square watching the video, there were also Rong fans holding onto their phones, suddenly feeling like crying. They had liked this person for a long time. Those who had been with him till now all knew what kind of person he was. That person was the strongest sorcerer in the esports scene, one of the 3 pillars along with Almighty Xiao and Almighty Qin. He wouldn't play an esports match that went against his own conscience for money. He wouldn't really lose his humanity. There was too much unfairness when it came to that person. It would indeed cause a person to be twisted. Perhaps it was because he had such a father. That was why he could survive in the cracks. But at the same time, someone had let down his youth. At his peak, his family had been ruined and he had been in such a state for over a year. He was someone who loved esports so much. Do you still remember the youngster who had stood in front of his teammates when he first debuted, wearing his uniform and smiling? That scene had been in the past for too long. For a long time, why didn't they see the almost extinguished light in that person's eyes when he appeared again? What exactly did he go through to become the complete opposite of what he had been in the past? He had been maliciously suspected, expelled by the club, betrayed by his teammates and robbed of his glory. However, even so, in the end, he hadn't done anything that went against his conscience. He had wanted to redress his father's grievances, going against the organization, but he hadn't executed the organization's orders. It was because he had told himself that he would only punish those who deserved to be punished and not the innocent. In the face of some pointed evidence, he couldn't deny it, because if he did, his father would be wronged for life. When everyone saw the final scene, not only the ordinary people, but even the members of the key case investigation unit who were still on duty stopped in their tracks, their eyes red. Rao Rong's father had brought them along. President Qin. Not far from the commercial square, a Land Rover was still queuing up to enter the parking lot. The driver looked at the screen in the distance and couldn't help but turn to look at his young master. Qin Mo's eyes were also on the words on the screen and the old photos. Then, he pushed open the car door, held the metal bar in front of him with one hand, and jumped over. His black trench coat drew an arc in the wind. The driver opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. After all, the young master's appearance just now was really handsome, very different from his usual self. Just as everyone was looking up at the big screen, Qin Mo walked into the crowd, holding his phone as he dialed Director Huang's number. There's no need to search inside, Z is outside. Director Huang, who had already entered the mall, was confused. Outside? How do you type on a computer outside? You have to ask Z, Qin Mo replied faintly. Qin Mo's voice was calm. The view isn't as good in the mall as it is outside. Also, we can see the police's movements from here. Get our men out and move quickly because Z is already wrapping things up. Director Huang widened his eyes. Wrapping things up? The video on the screen is still playing, how can it be wrapping things up? Z's network attack can be delayed. Qin Mo walked through the crowd, his eyes sweeping past the people that walked past him. Then, he headed towards the fountain. You can ask Smith about this. Director Huang pressed his throbbing head. Smith has already gone crazy. Is that so? Z slapped him in the face. This method is indeed maddening, the higher-ups should have taken action. Do you still have Rao Rong's father's file? I want to take a look. Qin Mo's gaze was as deep as the night, walking as though he was searching for someone. Director Huang fell into a rare silence. It's a little difficult, it has been more than a year and it will take some effort to present some evidence. But for his case, the difficulty lies in the fact that the person in charge of his sentence and the file management has already retired. Some of the information has also been lost, making it difficult to reconstruct the situation. Which means someone has tampered with the file. Qin Mo's voice sank. Then check who he wanted to report back then. The information has been lost and there must be an internal problem. At this point, Director Huang understood that the person they were looking for was most likely someone with a high position and authority. As for how high this person's authority was, Director Huang glanced up at the screen. To be able to bury a grievance for such a long time without even seeing the light of day, it had to be someone in charge. Director Huang's heart couldn't help but tremble. If it wasn't for Zi's video, the grievance would never have been known. Z, the evil hacker, had chosen to use such a method to make a comeback. Was it to let everyone know the truth? Director Huang's body trembled. When he looked at the screen, his expression changed. This was Zi's intention. In that moment, Director Huang seemed to understand why Qin Mo had never believed Z was the culprit from the start. Even if their modus operandi was very similar, even the way they acted was 90% similar. But in terms of intention, it was worlds apart. Z was using a hacker's method to do the same thing. To cry out for justice. To let the truth be known and to return justice to the victim. Even so, Director Huang didn't believe their path was the same. Because they had to consider more. That was right, someone like Z would become the ideal hero in everyone's heart. But to maintain peace, they had to rely on the strict policemen who were constantly on the move and didn't even have time to eat when they were busy. Against Z. Even Director Huang felt that it was a pity. But he still had to say that people with different beliefs couldn't make plans together. In the past, Qin Mo had deviated when it came to Z. Therefore, this sentence could not be more suitable to be used on these two people. Among all the criminals, Z was the only one who could earn Qin Mo's praise, no one else. But a criminal was a criminal after all. He believed that Qin Mo had a balance in his heart. And now, Z had appeared again. Even he didn't know how Qin Mo would deal with it. Outside the plaza, the crowd was surging. The video on the screen was still playing. Qin Mo suddenly paused, the corners of his eyes arching. Where was the singing coming from? He furrowed his brows for a moment, then followed the sound and quickly walked over. At this moment, the singing stopped. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed in that instant. At this moment, the youngster in the middle of the plaza removed her guitar from her neck, placing it behind her back. Bojio's actions were natural, just like a singer by the side of the street, packing her belongings and heading home after encountering trouble. She bent her long legs, closing the laptop on the ground. The speed was still running. There was a minute delay. To Bojio, a minute was enough. She turned, but didn't go to the motorcycle parked at the parking lot. Because she knew that if she rode the motorcycle now, it would be a signal to the police that she was there. She carried the guitar and walked into the crowd. Bojio was still wearing a black mask. Even though the police had moved from the inside to the outside of the mall, there were two policemen who brushed past her. They didn't notice that the person they were looking for had walked past them, heading towards the crowd. Bojio didn't walk quickly because most of the people around her were still immersed in the video. Their emotions and walking were heavy. At this moment, it wasn't a good thing to walk quickly. Some of the girls watched as the youngster, who had mesmerized them, walked with them, their hearts beating faster. They hadn't expected the youngster to walk in the same direction. They wanted to ask him where he was going and if it was on the way. Just as the girls' faces turned darker, the youngster suddenly glanced up. The young man suddenly looked up and saw a tall and straight figure standing in the crowd. It was as if he was a god waiting for a rabbit to come to him. Bojio's fingers stilled, her pupils trembling. She started to analyze the situation. There was still a distance to walk from here to there. But she couldn't just turn around and leave, because that would only make the Almighty notice her at first glance. Hence, she could only face him head-on. This situation was similar to the first time they had met at the Fifth Avenue. The difference was that Bojio already knew how formidable her opponent was. She had seen the Almighty, but he hadn't seen her. Even if he had seen her, she had disguised herself. But Bojio wasn't sure if her disguise would work in front of the Almighty. Bojio watched as the distance between them shortened. Her left hand, which was in her pocket, clenched tightly. 90 meters. 80 meters. 70 meters. 60 meters, Bojio counted the numbers in her mind. There were 2 times when the Almighty's gaze swept over her. Her heart didn't seem to belong to her, beating rapidly. She had to think of a way. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be recognized. Chapter 972. Hoshino, who was as gentle as jade, reached out to press down on his earpiece. "I'm here." Create a small commotion to divert Chin Mo's attention. When Bojio spoke, she tilted her head. Her voice was so soft that no one around her could hear what she was saying. "Chin Mo." Hoshino adjusted his position, catching sight of the tall and aloof figure. His fingers paused. "Okay." The moment Hoshino said okay, Bojio and Chin Mo were only 20 meters apart. If it wasn't for the person in between, it would have been 20 meters. If it wasn't for the person in between, the Almighty would have recognized her. The Almighty would have recognized her long ago. Even the ticket seller at the cinema hadn't been able to escape the Almighty's sharp observation. This time, even Bojio wasn't sure how high her chances of escaping were. But wouldn't it be more exciting this way? The youngster curled her lips into a smile. Listening to the discussion about her behind her, she suddenly paused and turned her head back. The black mask covered most of her face, but her voice was gentle and a little low. "You guys seem to like the song I sang just now." The girls' hearts started racing. They looked at the youngster's beautiful eyes, feeling as though they were being sucked in. What was this? She was suddenly being hit on by a pretty boy. And it was the pretty boy they had been trying to get his contact details. "MMH? Why aren't you speaking?" Bojio tilted her body. Even her shoulders were a little low. After all, with her height, she had to lower herself if she wanted to listen to a normal girl's words. The young man's shoulders were lowered, as though he was listening to what she had to say. The scent of the young man wafted towards her, and a pair of deep eyes stared at her. He was so handsome that it made her breath quicken. Any girl would feel their heart racing when they were stared at like that. The girl who was being hit on felt a little dizzy, her cheeks flushed. "MMH, I like it. I'm planning to sing at the next intersection, you can follow me if you like." The youngster's gaze was so sincere, her aura gentle and gentle. It was hard to resist. "Follow, you have to follow. He's asking me out, he's definitely asking me out." The girl smiled happily. Bojio maintained their intimate position. There were still 5 meters left. At this moment, Chin Mo's gaze landed on him. Not far away, a loud and clear sound suddenly rang out. "Z. Where's Z?" No one knew who said it, because it came from the crowd. But it was such a sound. This attracted the attention of all the police. In addition, there was a person who was flying through the crowd. His speed was so fast that the people on the other side immediately moved. Even Chin Mo's figure shifted for a moment. But it was only for an instant. As soon as he took a step forward, he immediately retracted his leg. Those eyes were very deep. "Don't go over." He spoke to Director Huang through the Bluetooth earpiece. But it was too late. Once they took action, there was no turning back. This was the norm when carrying out a mission. In addition, there were so many people in the commercial square. Even if an order was given, it would be very difficult to return to its original position. However, this also showed that the person was very close to him. Sun Tzu's Art of War. A diversion. Chin Mo's handsome side profile was more dignified than ever. The corners of his lips lifted slightly, his eyes sweeping across everyone around him. Chin Mo's smile made Bojo feel danger. Even after such a huge commotion, the Almighty still hadn't left. The immense pressure was similar to the time she had been in the Fifth Avenue. She had avoided the police easily, but not this person. Her wig had been removed and she had been forced to fight. Today, she didn't want to fight. Because if she fought, she would definitely lose her position. Losing her position meant that her identity would be lost. Fortunately, she was prepared. She was prepared to prevent the Almighty from falling for her trap. To be honest, everyone who played hero had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Under normal circumstances, the culprit would appear. Wouldn't an ordinary person move? The Almighty stood there without moving, as though he was waiting for her to come to him. Bojo arched a brow. Just as she was about to meet the Almighty, she suddenly turned and asked the girl beside her, "What's going on?" "They seem to be arresting someone." The girl only had eyes for the youngster. Bojo laughed lightly, her tone natural. "Do you want to take a look?" "I don't think so. Will it be dangerous?" After all, the commotion was huge. She wasn't sure what would happen. Were all boys curious? The girl tilted her head towards the youngster wearing a black mask. "All right then." Bojo sounded helpless. She raised her left hand and pressed onto the backpack on the girl's back. Her voice was low and warm. "It's a little heavy, can I help you?" It's fine. The girl blushed. "You can just stand beside me, why do you need to carry the backpack?" Bojo laughed softly. "I really don't know what to do with you." That pampering tone. Someone was drunk. Some people frowned slightly when they saw this scene. The latter was Chin Mo. The moment he locked onto the youngster, he almost suspected that he was the person he was especially familiar with. However, their posture was too intimate, as if they were a couple who had just started dating. Z wouldn't bring a girl with him. Besides, the intimacy wasn't fake. It shouldn't be. There wasn't any time for Chin Mo to confirm anything. Amidst the crowd, the couple had already walked past him. Chin Mo glanced back, suspicion still lingering in his eyes. Walking in front, Bojo could feel the Almighty's burning gaze behind her. It was as though he could see right through her. Fortunately, the girl reacted at this time. She blushed and said, "Can we always be together later?" Bojo felt as though every girl was her angel. "Let me take a look, if it's possible." It was this last interaction that caused Chin Mo to shift his gaze away from the youngster's back, towards the other person. In reality, Bojo didn't know that it was her back view that made Chin Mo even more suspicious. Fortunately, Bojo had prepared beforehand. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to escape this time. The girl was the key. Bojo smiled. Successfully escaping from the Almighty was a great achievement for her. The girl watched from the side and couldn't help murmuring, "He's really handsome." It was also these 4 words that were faintly floating in the air, and the message within them was captured by others. Chin Mo, who had shifted his gaze away, suddenly turned his head back. His dark eyes emitted the fiercest glint. Actually, Chin Mo wasn't the only one who noticed the problem, even Bojo knew that there was something wrong with the 4 words. Which couple would use such a tone to compliment each other's handsomeness? *T flashed across Bojo's mind. She was one step faster than Chin Mo. Before the girl could react, Bojo heard the youngster apologize. He heard the young man say, "Sorry." Then, she turned around. The youngster's black bangs scattered over her forehead. Her skin, which was not covered by the mask, was fair and translucent, as though there was no color in it. Her slightly pursed lips carried a trace of stubbornness, as though someone was about to recognize her, and she felt that this game was not that fun. The next second, she was pushed out by the youngster, her words echoing, "If I had a choice, I wouldn't want him to carry you." MMH? Before the girl could react, she was pushed into the arms of another person. The smell of peppermint tobacco made the girl pause for a moment. That person. The girl lifted her head for a moment, her attention instantly captured by the beautiful curve of his chin. Chin Mo furrowed his brows heavily. He moved her away and ran towards the youngster. Both their figures and skills were very beautiful and handsome. As they shuttled through the crowd, it was as if they were filming an American blockbuster. Bo Jiu moved swiftly while observing her surroundings. She arched a brow slightly as she glanced at the figure in front of her. She took large strides forward, using the momentum from her body. With two loud thuds, under everyone's watchful eyes, the youngster leaped over the car and landed on the roof. F***CK, he's so handsome. This can't be a movie, right? Qinggong. It wasn't any Qinggong, it was ninja skills. As the young master of the hacker world, if she didn't have such skills, she wouldn't be able to make a living. But even so, when those girls saw this scene, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The youngster standing on the roof was extremely eye-catching. She didn't forget to toss her guitar to the side when she did this. She successfully became a stumbling block for the person chasing after her. If it had been anyone else, they might have fallen. But the person chasing after her wasn't anyone else, it was Chin Mo. With a beautiful turn, he bent his long legs slightly and heard a loud thud. The guitar was kicked into pieces in midair. Bo Jiu heard the sound but didn't even turn her head. Amidst everyone's exclamations, the young man took a step back and leaped from one roof to another like a bolt of lightning. Then, he jumped out of the car. Taking advantage of the gap between the red lights, he rolled on the ground, got up, and dashed toward the opposite side of the road. Some people from the Key Case Investigation Unit noticed the commotion. But it was useless. The youngster wasn't just skilled. When this person moved, his speed was especially fast. Moreover, he was in the middle of the road. How were they going to catch him if he could use such a method? They could only rely on young Master Chin. That was what the crime squad members were thinking. He was too far away and they couldn't shoot him. At the start of the operation, young Master Chin had instructed them not to use guns. But even if they had guns, they wouldn't be able to aim. The youngster's mobility was too strong. She didn't leave the crowd. It wasn't easy for them to shoot. It was the same even when she barged into the crowd. The crowd had assumed that the youngster would leave just like that. But what they didn't expect was that there was another figure following closely behind. His slender legs and his black windbreaker fluttered as he moved, making everyone feel that they must have come to the wrong place. To be honest, both of them were equally skilled and fast. The only difference was the length of their legs. Chin Mo's legs were longer than Bo Jiu's and the Almighty was good at predicting her escape route. The moment she moved, the Almighty would know where she would land. Hence, the distance between them narrowed. Just as she was about to be caught, Bo Jiu turned and threw something behind her. Swoosh! It was a pack of cigarettes. As Chin Mo dodged, he asked faintly, "Don't you have anything else to throw?" Bo Jiu didn't reply. Any turn would give the other party a chance to catch her. The Almighty's height and long legs gave him a natural advantage. Bo Jiu ran, kicking the wall beside her. Using the recoil, she sped up and flipped over the railing in front of her. Still not giving up. Chin Mo arched a brow, rushing over. He didn't need to kick the wall to catch up to the cold figure. The difference in leg length was indeed useful at a crucial moment. Bo Jiu didn't have anything else to throw other than the USB lighter in her pocket. But if she threw it out, her identity would definitely be exposed. Right at this moment, Chin Mo narrowed his eyes. He estimated the distance and reached out with his left hand, grabbing onto the youngster's shirt. Bo Jiu paused. Without hesitation, she flipped in the air, using the recoil to temporarily escape the fate of being dragged back. But that wasn't the end. Chin Mo was already close to her. This meant that she would either win or be caught. The moment she thought about it, she would be met with shock or disgust. Bojo seemed to have an endless amount of energy. Her relationship with the Almighty was strained. If she was caught, everything would be over. With that thought in mind, Bojo lifted her leg and kicked towards Chin Mo. The sharp wind seemed to be able to split everything in half. Chin Mo took a step back, narrowing his eyes. He reached out once more, but this time, he didn't grab her arm like he had done at the Fifth Avenue. Instead, he went for the black mask on the youngster's face. Bojo jolted. She used her left hand to block, turning beautifully. Even though the mask was caught, Chin Mo couldn't see her face. But without the mask, she wouldn't be able to face the Almighty. Even if she made some adjustments, the Almighty would definitely recognize her. It was too difficult. Bojo jumped again, but this time, her luck wasn't as good. In order to avoid the youngster in front of her, she tilted slightly. It was this distance that allowed Chin Mo to grab onto her shirt again. Chapter 973. In the nick of time. A black motorcycle sped by the side of the street. The person on top was wearing a helmet. His eyes were deep and he had a gentle aura. If it wasn't Hoshino, who else could it be? He held on to the handlebars with one hand, turning his body and extending his hand in her direction. Swoosh! The youngster moved in midair, grabbing onto the person's hand. With a flip of her long legs, she climbed onto the motorcycle. His speed was very fast, and his movements were as graceful as flowing water. The drivers in the cars parked by the roadside were dumbfounded. Even if the crime squad reacted, it wouldn't be of any use. The heavy-duty motorcycle, be it the size, appearance, or the sleek design, was a testament to its speed. It was like a wild leopard charging out, not easy to block. Chin Mo stood tall and straight, his eyes looking at the tomahawk gradually disappearing into the traffic, as if he had been abandoned by someone. He slowly clenched the black mask in his palm, and the aura that emanated from his back was extremely cold. Director Huang stood opposite him. The moment he saw the person escaping, his breathing became heavy. When he caught sight of the black mask in Chin Mo's hands, his eyes widened. You removed Z's mask? Did you get a good look at his face? Do you need me to contact a technician to draw out Z's facial features based on your memory? I didn't see him. Chin Mo glanced up, replying calmly. Director Huang froze on the spot. Young Master Chin's gaze sent chills down his spine no matter how he looked at it. Cough. Director Huang started to reflect. We didn't think things through, we didn't expect this to happen. Z is indeed a thorough person. He gave the thieves nearby a sum of money and instructed them to flee upon receiving orders. I've already questioned the one we caught. He doesn't know Z's face, he only gave a rough description of his height and clothing. The person you were chasing just now is him, the rest of the clues are pitiful. Chin Mo glanced at him. Start with the motorcycle. Director Huang was confused, they wouldn't be able to find anything from the license plate. It's a limited edition tomahawk, there aren't many in the country, check the owner. Chin Mo's voice was calm. Before Director Huang could reply, his phone rang. The call was from the higher-ups. The tone of the call was not particularly good and carried too much emotion. Have you caught him? The culprit is skilled, we have to continue the investigation. Director Huang wiped his sweat as he spoke. His tone turned stern. You should be aware of the impact of this matter. It was such a public occasion and the mall was hacked, but the crime squad couldn't do anything about it. Director Huang, isn't it time for you to reflect on the crime squad's capabilities? We need to give the people an explanation, and even more so, we need to give an explanation to those who have been affected by this incident. Director Huang paused before replying, I understand. I don't need to say anything else. Even if what Z did wasn't a heinous crime, there are some problems that need to be solved in a proper way. What would the public say if a hacker found out about the unjust case from years ago and the police knew nothing about it? What will the higher-ups think? Director Huang inhaled deeply. Secretary Liang, I understand what you're trying to say. I don't really care about what the higher-ups think, but there are some unjust cases that should be uncovered by our own people, otherwise, it would be too much of a slap in the face. Secretary Liang frowned, but before he could speak, Director Huang added, there are still some loose ends to be done. Director Huang added, there are still some loose ends to be done. I don't think the most important thing now is to find Z. Instead, we should help an old comrade reverse the verdict and give his son an explanation. If it's really as the video says, that Rao Rong hasn't been able to seek redress for the past year, there must be an internal problem. Secretary Liang paused for a moment before saying, I agree with you on this point. I still have a meeting to attend, and it will be about today's incident. So, Old Huang, any evidence on your side is especially important. I've already submitted a proposal to deal with this organization. We will work with the United Nations Interpol, and the military will also send people over. They should be in Jiang City by now, and they will work together with the Key Case Investigation Unit. That's all for now. Director Huang listened to the other end of the call. He glanced over at the commercial plaza, the screen had switched back to the advertisement. It was as though the video hadn't existed. But it wasn't non-existent. The video had already spread online. With such a huge influence, it meant that Rao Rong's father's case had to be retried. And this time, no one dared to obstruct the retrial. With that in mind, Director Huang felt comforted. He finally understood what it meant to borrow the power of the masses. With the supervision of the masses, some matters would be sped up. But at the same time, he had witnessed Zi's true terror. Fortunately, she had only exposed the truth and hadn't used her power for anything else. But did she come to China because someone had impersonated her? Director Huang couldn't help but ask Qin Mo. Qin Mo retracted his gaze, stuffed his left hand that was holding the black mask into his pocket, his voice indifferent. Perhaps. What did he mean by a perhaps? Director Huang wanted to continue, but Qin Mo boarded the Land Rover. Qin Mo boarded the Land Rover parked by the roadside. Before he closed the door, he added, the outcome of Rao Rong's father's case is crucial. Rao Rong will only tell the crime squad after finding the person who framed his father. Director Huang frowned. Shouldn't he cooperate with the investigation now? He won't. Qin Mo glanced at Director Huang, his expression calm. Because he doesn't trust the police. Director Huang shook his head. How did he become like this? After being hurt so many times, a person has to change. Qin Mo arched a brow, as though he was stating a fact. Around that year, he believed but realized he was hurt even more. If it wasn't out of hatred, no one would be foolish enough to get involved with a criminal. Director Huang clenched his teeth. This matter was more troublesome than he had expected. If they didn't investigate further, Rao Rong would probably hate them even more. It wasn't going to be easy. There's one more thing. Qin Mo glanced up, a glint lingering in his eyes. There are some things he didn't say because he wanted to say it during the trial. He was worried that if he said it now, the person who framed his father would have a way to avoid it. You should think about who in the internal department would have that ability. Director Huang froze. He had thought about the conditions Qin Mo had mentioned. It seemed like it was time to take this issue seriously. The Land Rover drove off. The chauffeur sat in the front and wanted to drive straight back to the courtyard. But he heard his young master's voice from behind. Turn left. Turn left? Where was he going? The chauffeur didn't dare to ask. Qin Mo sat in the back seat, glancing at the black mask in his hands. He whipped out his phone and dialed a number. Chen Xiaodong heard the sound in the living room and immediately picked up the phone. Hello, Fu family. Chen Xiaodong. Qin Mo's voice was faint. Chen Xiaodong felt his head go numb. Almighty Qin, it's me. Qin Mo's tone didn't change. Get your young master to the phone. Chen Xiaodong exclaimed. My young master isn't home, he moved to the school. Young Master Qin, why don't you call him? School. Inexplicably, Qin Mo felt as though he had heard wrongly. However, his smart judgment told him that he hadn't heard wrongly. His voice suddenly turned cold. Which school? Chen Xiaodong thought it couldn't be. What kind of world was Almighty Qin living in? He didn't even know about school. He moved to the male dormitory and only comes back on Saturdays. It would have been better if Chen Xiaodong hadn't explained. Qin Mo wouldn't have such a strong image. The moment he explained, his gaze deepened. He tightened the mask in his hands and knocked on the car door. The sound didn't just startle the chauffeur, it also confused Chen Xiaodong. What was going on? The chauffeur sat in the front, watching his young master's cold and handsome face. Someone was going to be in trouble today. Indeed, someone was going to be in trouble. Fan Jia had never expected things to turn out this way. Z, the person who should have died a long time ago. How could she ruin her plans to such an extent? She had to make preparations to retreat. But she wasn't willing to leave just like that. Perhaps, there was another way. Fan Jia narrowed her eyes, trying to maximize the benefits she and her partner could get. As long as someone warned Rao Rong, he wouldn't say anything. Come to think of it, even if she didn't warn him, with Rao Rong's intelligence, he wouldn't go all out. Rao Rong didn't know who killed his father. She was the only one in the know. If she exposed it, it would be a secret forever. There was no information, no files, even the judge had retired. The case had been in the past for so long, it wasn't easy to investigate. Besides, a truly powerful person wouldn't kill someone personally. Of course, they would do it from a higher position. Unless there was a thorough investigation, it wouldn't be easy to find out who the culprit was. Rao Rong was well aware of this matter. Before the culprit surfaced, he wouldn't say much. Besides, even if Rao Rong leaked her information, it wouldn't be the same. She wasn't the same as when she had met him. It was just that she had lost some information. However, some information was indeed fatal to her. Hence, she had to make some preparations. Fan Jia clenched her fists. The main point was the information released by the person who was supposed to be dead. How did he know which school she was in and how did he manage to deduce her current identity? Her brother was right. If she wanted to get what she wanted, she had to get rid of Z first. Previously, she had used Qin Mo. Even though it hadn't been successful, it had been effective. But this time, since Qin Mo had lost a portion of his memory, didn't that mean that the chances of success would be much higher? Besides, those people didn't want Qin Mo to have any contact with Z. Everyone hoped that he could think rationally and without any emotions, right? In reality, Fan Jia still couldn't understand why he treated Z differently. However, this difference made her want him even more. Fan Jia. Fan Jia. The voice beside her snapped Fan Jia back to her senses. What is it? We are going to meet at the school gates, do you want to come? Sure, wait for me to go get something. At times like this, she had to act as she usually did. Even though there was a temporary setback and the plan had to be delayed, it didn't mean she didn't have a chance of winning. Fan Jia pushed the door open and entered the dormitory. She dialed a number. Rao Rong has betrayed us, either the crime squad won't be able to find anything or he will shut his mouth forever. It will be easier for you to take action. The person on the other end inhaled deeply. Are you crazy? Why are you taking such a risk? Do you know how strict the investigation is? No matter how strict the investigation is, as long as there is no evidence, you won't be able to get a verdict even if you are suspected, right? Fan Jia narrowed her eyes. Besides, it was that person's idea to make Rao Rong's father disappear. With him protecting you, what are you afraid of? Do you know when he will stop protecting you? Even if you don't do anything and wait for the internal investigation, that person will have no choice but to separate from you in order to protect himself. Back then, the cleanup was done so cleanly, even if there is any information left, it won't be found out. You can either attack or wait for your death. Think about it carefully. A middle-aged man in uniform stood in the corridor, his forehead covered in a layer of sweat. Ever since he had seen the video, he had a feeling. He couldn't hold on any longer. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and enter the meeting. Yes, I'm coming. The man looked at the back of the person in front of him, and the girl's words kept echoing in his mind. She was right. Either he caused a commotion, or he would be cut off. Instead of being passive, he might as well take the initiative now. It was a huge meeting with the leader in charge. The entire process was carried out in secret. There was a change in the weather. The wind blew against the youngster's clothes, allowing her to relax slightly. She smiled. That was close. Hoshino did not comment. After all, every time the youth did something, it was to a certain extent. When was he not arrogant and bold? But Chin Mo was indeed the toughest opponent they had ever met. Drop me off at the front, I'll take the train back, it's one stop away. Just then, her phone rang, the caller ID from the Fu family's house. Bojo arched a brow. Hello. Young master, it's me. Chen Xiaodong seemed to have been triggered by something, his voice breaking. Bojo replied, I know it's you, why? Young Master Qin called just now, he wanted you to answer the phone. I told him you weren't home, you went to stay in school, but he seemed angry, I don't know why. Chapter 974. Young Master, isn't it weird? If young Master Qin wants to look for you, he can just call your phone. Why did he call my house? When I picked up the call, my scalp went numb. Even though young Master Qin's voice sounds nice, it's still scary. As a butler, Chen Xiaodong was a little naggy. But it was his nagging that made Bojo frown. Xiaodong. MMH. Chen Xiaodong didn't understand why his young master was calling him that. Bojo's gaze dimmed. I have something to do, I'll hang up first. If young Master Qin calls again, tell him I'm in school. That's what I said, Before Chen Xiaodong could finish his sentence, the busy tone came from the other end. Bojo flipped over. She held her backpack with one hand and pulled open her jacket with the other. She tossed it into the bin at the side. Her movements were swift. Hoshino immediately realized something. Did something happen? Qin Mo is suspecting me. Bojo paused. He suspects that I'm the one in the plaza. Hoshino's gaze stilled. Do you want to leave? Bojo glanced up and shook her head, her voice low. The National League hasn't started yet, I'll leave after Supreme Alliance wins. Hoshino watched the youngster. After a long moment, he said, I'll arrange a special passage to prevent any difficulties. Bojo swiftly changed her appearance, leaving only her hair. She couldn't do it here, she had to return to the dormitory and create an alibi. There was one more thing she had to do, she had to reach school before the Almighty. Bojo glanced at the main road, turning towards Hoshino. Head from the east, leave the car at an area with many stolen cars and hail a cab back. Alright. Hoshino's aura didn't change, his long legs supporting the left side of the motorcycle. Be careful, if we're discovered, we'll head back to Fifth Avenue. Bojo nodded, rushing into the subway station. She glanced down at the time on her wrist, thankful that it was a traffic jam. If not, they wouldn't have been able to shake off the crime squad car so easily. But even so, there were still cameras on the road. The police might not have the video of them passing through the alleys, but as long as they appeared on the main road, there would be clues. Even if these clues were not found now, in less than half a day's time, all the major checkpoints would be checking the vehicles. Therefore, she and Hoshino had to seize the time and act separately. Bojo had already thought about this. The only thing she didn't expect was the phone call from the Almighty. Just like what Chen Xiaodong said, if the Almighty was really looking for her, he could have just called her or sent her a WeChat message. But the Almighty called the Fu family directly. He wasn't looking for her. He wanted to see if she was at home and if she had an alibi. Bojo gripped the handrail in the train, her eyes bright. As expected, it was never easy to shake off the Almighty's pursuit. Her time was running out. Bojo glanced down at her wrist. Once the train reached the station, she took large strides towards the crowd. Her speed was very fast. Her hair was still black, which meant that she had to wash off the paint on it, in order to prevent being caught by the Almighty in school. Bojo chose to enter from the back door. This meant that she had to climb over the wall. The back door of number 1 middle school was next to number 2 middle school. Bojo tugged her collar with one hand and was about to move. Before the thorn-head youngster could walk over, he said, F***ck, it's already night time. Expert, why are you climbing over the wall? Aren't you afraid of being caught by the headmaster? Bojo paused, turning to look at a certain Chinibu. Hey, your hair is dyed black. When I saw your back, my instincts told me it was you. I never expected it to be you. Bojo held her forehead, sighing deeply. She scanned the things in his hands and pulled him over. You're wasting my time, do you know that? Bring the bowl of noodles over. Bowl of noodles? No, I was busy with my date and didn't have a proper meal. The canteen doesn't even cook, this is my only ration and I even snatched it from my little brother. Bojo reached out. Give it to me. F***ck, you're robbing, do you understand? Is it a trend for good students to rob bad students? Bojo didn't care what he was yelling at the back, grabbing his lunchbox. She used one hand to support herself against the tree trunk and took large strides, climbing up the wall. She stood there and jumped down. Her movements were fast and suave. The boss of number 2 middle school, who had wanted to snatch his bowl of noodles back, hesitated. In the end, he decided to buy another bowl since his skills weren't as good as the other parties. If he climbed over the wall and lost, it would be embarrassing. He was someone with a girlfriend now, he had to take care of his image. Bojo walked quickly, especially when night fell. She was like a silent shadow. When she appeared in the dormitory, the 2 roommates who had skipped the night revision session and were playing poker were shocked. Boss, why are you so quiet when you walk? Ah, your hair. Bojo glanced at them and said, if Almighty Chin asks later, tell him I've been in the dormitory the whole time and never left, understand? They didn't really understand. The 2 people who skipped class were confused, but looking at the young man's cold and ruthless face, no one dared to object. After all, the school hunk had won their respect from the moment he entered their dormitory. Even if they were suspicious that Almighty Chin's visit to their boss was just a fantasy, they couldn't expose it, right? Once she entered the dormitory, Bojo turned on the hot water and soaked the instant noodles before entering the bathroom. Number 1 middle school was indeed the best high school in Jiang City. Even the dormitory was a 5-star one with a shower area. Bojo glanced at herself in the mirror. She lowered her head and aimed it at the faucet of the sink, not caring if it was cold water or not. The white foam from the shampoo swept across the corner of her eyes, the dark color fading away slowly, returning to its original silver color. Outside the school, Jiang Zhua had rushed to the entrance after receiving the call. When he saw Qin Mo's cold aura, he couldn't help but ask curiously, young Master Fu just wants to stay in the dormitory and experience group life. Why are you so angry? Qin Mo didn't reply, walking into the school entrance. The male dormitory wasn't far away. Jiang Zhua laughed mischievously. It can't be, you still haven't settled that person. Qin Mo turned and glanced at Jiang Zhua, his tone calm. You still haven't settled Shui Yao Yao and she seems to be rejecting you. Jiang Zhua's fingers stilled and he laughed. Is that the same? You should know that I'm not as serious as you. I'm not bent by a single person, but what exactly is your little spade thinking? Does he want to stay in the dormitory and study hard? It can't be. We're here, this is the dormitory, I just found it for you. Qin Mo didn't say another word as he walked in. Even though number 1 middle school's facilities were good, it was a famous school with a long history. Hence, there weren't any elevators in the dormitory, which meant they had to walk up the stairs. The moment Chin Mo walked in, he attracted many people's attention. Moreover, Jiang Zuo was following behind him. The appearance of the two male almighties of number 1 middle school made everyone excited. The boys' world was that simple. To them, Chin Mo was the strongest boss in the history of number 1 middle school. They could see each other usually. After all, it was rare for Chin Feng to return to the school for a visit. But for him to appear in the male dormitory, it was a miracle among miracles. There were already many people taking out their phones to take pictures. Some of Chin Mo's fans were even more passionate, shouting from behind, "Almighty Chin, you have to win the National League." Chin Mo was already on the second floor, it was hard for him to react. Jiang Zuo chuckled. "You seem more popular than before, Supreme Alliance is really popular. How does it feel to be liked by so many boys?" "I don't feel anything." Chin Mo glanced at him, gesturing for him to shut up. "Wait for me downstairs, I have something to discuss with that guy." Jiang Zuo arched a brow, smiling. "You need someone to guard the door." "I'll guard the door for you and help you clear the area." "Up to you." Chin Mo went up to the third floor and saw a group of half-naked high school students. They were holding a wash basin, baggy pants and a double trolley board. They were probably washing their clothes in the study room. Chin Mo frowned at their attire because one of them was running around in his underwear. Chin Mo's gaze turned colder at the thought of a certain someone living in such an environment. However, whether that guy really lived here or if it was just a disguise was yet to be verified. Along the way, they stepped on the rubbish on the ground, the smell spreading was definitely not pleasant. Jiang Zuo's faint smile finally broke, he reached out to press his nose and mouth. As for the boys on both sides of the corridor, when they saw the two of them, they seemed to be petrified and just stood there in a daze. There was only one thought in their minds, F***ck, why did Almighty Chin come to such a state? The one in his underwear was afraid of hurting Almighty Chin's eyes, so he hid behind the wall, covering his lower body with both hands, wishing that he was transparent. Humans were like this. If a bunch of guys were shirtless and didn't wear pants, no one would think much of it. But suddenly, an extremely clean person came in, and that person was the idol of their male god, so their faces were a little hot. Four-Eyed, who was standing at the door with his lunch box in hand, was also blushing. Who could explain to him what was going on? Why did Almighty Chin stop in front of their dormitory, stuffing one hand into his pocket and arching a brow at him? Even though he didn't want to admit it, as a man, their heights weren't just a little different. "Knock on the door." Chin Mo's voice had always been calm, but it always had a natural aura that made people who heard it want to execute it uncontrollably. Four-Eyed turned and knocked on the door silently. Honestly, no one in the dormitory could hear him knocking on the door. Four-Eyed felt that young Master Chin's presence made it harder for him to enter the room. Usually, he would just kick the door open. That was the correct way to enter the dormitory. He was so refined, but he really didn't. Jiang Zuo could ease the atmosphere. "Isn't it night self-study session? There are many people back. It hasn't been very strict recently. Boys, after all." Four-Eyed chuckled, his eyes drifting over to Almighty Chin's cold and indifferent side profile. Someone should have opened the door. It was fine if he skipped class, but didn't he know how to come out and get his food? Since Chin Mo and Jiang Zuo were standing there at the same time, room 419 became the focus of attention in the corridor. They had a premonition that the dormitory was going to be popular. First, the school hunk moved in, and now, young Master Chin. In the past, they wouldn't have imagined this. The four-eyed man didn't feel much pressure. Under the piercing glare, he took a deep breath and knocked on the wooden door 3 times. F***ck, who is it? I'm still playing games. It should be Four-Eyed. Our food is definitely here. Hey, that's good. The man opened the door as he spoke. You really are four-eyed. Come, let me see what you bought. What 2 words? The man couldn't finish his sentence. This. What was with Almighty Qin and young Master Jiang beside him? All of a sudden, the man was reminded of his new boss's words. He turned his head and opened his mouth. He wanted to ask his new boss to come out of the bathroom, but unexpectedly, the youngster was already sitting in front of the wooden table. His hair seemed to have just been washed as it was still dripping water. His back was facing him, his head lowered as he fiddled with a bowl of instant noodles, seemingly waiting for it to be cooked. This. When did the new boss come out? Wasn't he a little too fast when he opened the door? Qin Mo glanced up at the man who was petrified in front of him. He reached out to push him away and walked in. The man who was coming down from the top bunk almost tripped and fell when he saw this scene. When the man at the door snapped back to his senses, he called out anxiously, "Boss." When she had heard the knocking, Bojio had already guessed that it was the Almighty. She arched a brow and turned back with the plastic fork that came with the bowl of noodles. The Almighty was standing at the messy entrance of the dormitory. He was dressed in a trench coat, his long legs tall and straight. His elegance and cleanliness were a stark contrast to the surroundings. No matter what, she felt a little guilty. Chapter 975. Qin Mo watched as the youngster's silver hair dripped with water, her expression unguarded. Her gaze was as clear as ever, as though she didn't know anything. Qin Mo took a step forward. The person who almost fell from the upper bunk hurriedly retracted his hand, burrowing into the blanket. It was a pity that he had to cover his upper body in the summer. Bojio could feel the oppressive aura inching closer to her. She didn't know if her roommates would believe her if she told them that the Almighty was bored and wanted to play with her. "All of you, leave." This was Qin Mo's first sentence, his faint voice tinged with coldness. Although it was only 6 words, it made the backs of the other 3 people in the dormitory stiffen. They looked at each other, quickly packed up their things, and stood in the safe area. The so-called safe zone was the place beside Jiang Zhua, who had a faint smile on his face. "It seems like we've disturbed them." Jiang Zhua patted one of their shoulders. "Let's have a smoke outside." The person nodded. What else could they do? They couldn't defeat young Master Qin. Besides, young Master Qin looked like he wanted revenge. It wasn't because they didn't have a collective sense of honor. It wasn't because they didn't want to stand on their new boss's side. Even if they were to make a move, they would just be adding to young Master Qin's side. Wait a minute. Qin Mo turned, his gaze sweeping over the 3 of them. She has been here the entire time, she hasn't left. Ah. Bojio heard the exclamation, her heart sinking. Fortunately, Four Eyes was more reliable, he pushed his spectacles up and tried to remain calm. No, she has. Boss even showed his face in class and bought a bowl of instant noodles. Bojio smiled faintly. This was the perfect excuse. As expected, those who were well-educated were better at lying. As expected of the weirdest student in their dormitory. Qin Mo glanced at Four Eyes, his gaze shifting towards the other 2. That fleeting gaze made him chuckle coldly. Is that so? Yes, Almighty Qin, you don't know how hard it is to persevere at night. The Thornhead finally regained his sense of existence. But it was obvious that based on Bojio's understanding of the Almighty, he didn't believe her. She hadn't left. Fortunately, she wasn't tricked by her teammate. Done. Jiang Zhua reached out and pulled the door handle over. He said meaningfully, "You two have a good chat. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Just keep the commotion down. I'll be guarding the door." Bojio watched Jiang Zhua's smile, which made him look like a pimp. After closing the door, the other 3 finally heaved a sigh of relief. When young Master Qin caught them and asked them questions, their hearts were in their throats. But Boss was amazing. How did he know what young Master Qin would ask them? Needless to say, their acting just now was top-notch. After admiring themselves, the three of them couldn't help but be curious. They asked Jiang Zhua, "Young Master Jiang, what happened between young Master Qin and our boss? Did you have a conflict?" Jiang Zhua leaned against the door, his head tilted as he lit a cigarette. He held it between his fingers and smiled. "How can it be a conflict? They are discussing matters regarding tomorrow's competition, so we can't disturb them, understand? As for how to negotiate, that would depend on Qin Mo. Honestly, Jiang Zhua rarely saw Qin Mo like today. It was rare to see him exuding such a cold aura from the inside out. Hopefully, everything was fine." Jiang Zhua flicked the cigarette ash in his hand, glancing at the messy tunnel. He felt that it was better to remind Qin Mo to hurry up. If he stayed in such an environment, he would smell. But Qin Mo wasn't going to check his messages. He allowed his phone to vibrate as he stuffed a hand into his pocket. He stood in front of Bojiu, looking down at her with an indifferent gaze. He didn't say a word, his gaze sending goosebumps down Bojiu's back. Bojiu's lashes fluttered. Qin Mo reached out, touching the bowl of noodles on the table. It was warm, proving that there was indeed water inside. Bojiu glanced up, watching the fair hand in front of her, each nail trimmed neatly. But that didn't mean he was harmless. His actions proved that the Almighty was suspicious of her. "For 19, did you move in because of the dorm name?" Qin Mo asked coldly. Bojiu stilled. "I didn't notice the dorm number." "Is that so?" Qin Mo watched the youngster's face. Bojiu revealed her tiger teeth, smiling faintly. "I'm a righteous person, I wouldn't think in that direction. Including seeing so many naked men walking around." Qin Mo's gaze darkened. Bojiu felt that she had to save herself at this moment. She caressed her nose. "After seeing you, these people are like a pile of bones, I'm not interested." Qin Mo paused. "Be more serious." "I am." Bojiu laughed. "Brother Mo, you aren't angry with me, right?" Qin Mo watched her, his gaze deep and unreadable. "I can stop being angry, sing me a song." Bojiu smiled. "Sure, what song do you want to hear?" "The Ordinary Road," Qin Mo replied faintly. But it was the name that made Bojiu's fingers freeze for a moment. "All right, I'll search for the lyrics." Just as she lowered her head to search, Qin Mo placed his hands on both sides of her. Qin Mo placed his hands on both sides of her and lowered his body. This way, they were very close to each other, so close that their breaths could touch each other's faces. Fortunately, Jiang Zhua had brought the people from the dormitory out. Otherwise, it would be hard not to think too much if someone saw their posture. Bojiu's heart tightened. This was undoubtedly the Almighty's interrogation method against her. Qin Mo watched her for a moment, his lips lifting into a devilish smile. "Jiu, do you know that a person's heart beats faster when they are lying?" Bojiu lifted her head, her face serious. "I don't know if I'm lying, but when you are so close to me, my heart beats faster." "Do I have to touch your chest and ask questions?" Qin Mo smiled, looking warm, but Bojiu knew it wasn't warm at all because there wasn't a hint of a smile in his eyes. The Almighty's gaze moved from her face to the ends of her hair. His left hand reached out, reaching under the hem of her top. He lifted it up and held on to her softness. Bojiu trembled. Chapter 976. That's the inconvenience of staying in the male dormitory. I want to take a shower before they all return. Her excuse was flawless. Qin Mo laughed again. He leaned against her, and there seemed to be a coldness at the corner of his mouth. Bojiu couldn't help but shrink back due to the strength of his fingers. However, Qin Mo was faster than her. He held the back of her head and watched as the water dripped from the youngster's silver hair landed on her delicate and fair collarbone. Qin Mo's eyes deepened and he retracted his hand. After regaining her freedom, Bojiu wanted to stand up. Chin Mo took out a black mask from his pocket. He looked at her and asked slowly, "Do you recognize this?" Bojo didn't have time to reply. Chin Mo had already placed the mask on her face. Bojo's heart trembled. She tried her best to look natural. Bojo knew where the mask had come from. It was the one that had been removed by the Almighty during their fight. The black mask accentuated the youth's beautiful eyes, making them look as bright as stars. Chin Mo watched the familiar brows peeking through the black mask, his gaze deepening. His fingers caressed the edge of Bojo's mask, lowering his body. "You really look alike." Bojo didn't dodge. "What does it look like?" "Like Z." The moment he said that, her back stiffened. It wasn't because of the Almighty's words, but because of the sudden kiss. Through the mask, he landed a kiss on her lips. Through the black cotton, his breath was filled with a faint scent. That kind of kiss could easily make one's heart palpitate. It was as if all the fragments of his brain had been sucked out. He couldn't think about anything else. "It's you, right?" A cool breath hit her ear. His handsome face vaguely carried a hint of bewitchment. "The person at the commercial square today." That sentence jolted her back to her senses. She didn't deny it directly, instead, she asked with a pair of confused eyes, "What commercial plaza?" Chin Mo narrowed his eyes. He stared at the face in front of him that always made him lose his rationality. His thoughts drifted. Wasn't it her? "Brother Mo, why aren't you saying anything?" Bojo seized the chance, asking, "What commercial plaza?" "It's nothing." Chin Mo was wearing a trench coat. His black hair was a little messy. Coupled with his face, he looked indescribably sexy. Then, he reached out and took off his trench coat, placing it over someone's head. Bojo paused. "Brother Mo, don't tell me you still don't want to see my face?" Who knew that as soon as she finished her sentence? His whole body was lifted up by someone. His lower abdomen was pressed against his shoulder, and his head was hanging down. It was not a comfortable position. Bojo was about to move when she heard his cold voice. "Do you want the whole school to know how I carried you out?" Bojo quietened down. After all, if word of this got out, she would be the one who would be embarrassed. Just thinking about it made the rumors terrifying. For example, when she chased after the Almighty couldn't stand it anymore and planned to dispose of her like a pile of trash. If she attached a photo to prove the truth, then she would really become famous in the school. She was still a boy. Which school hunk would be carried out like this? Hence, a wise man submits to circumstances. It was better for her to be quiet. The other people in room 419 were still asking Jiang Zhua about young Master Qin when the door in front of them opened. Chin Mo walked out with a pile of people on his shoulder. The guys from room 419 glanced at each other. They didn't need to think to know who young Master Qin was carrying. It couldn't be anyone other than the school hunk. However, in their minds, their boss was already extremely skilled. How good was young Master Qin at fighting? How could he defeat their boss in just a few minutes? Moreover, he even wanted to take him away. Chin Mo seemed to have noticed their gazes. He tilted his head, his eyes meeting theirs. "What is it?" "Nothing, nothing." One of them immediately stepped aside. Even though Bojo couldn't see her surroundings since her face was covered, she could hear their deep breaths and their voices. She knew what was going on. There must be a lot of people watching her. In the past, Bojo felt that the Almighty's habit of covering her with his jacket wasn't desirable. Now, Bojo grabbed onto the trench coat, afraid it would fall off. Jiang Zhua chuckled playfully. He turned to Chin Mo, "You're really something." "That works too." Chin Mo didn't reply. He carried a certain someone on his shoulder and walked out of the male dormitory under the watchful eyes of the guys. Then he stuffed Bojo into the back seat of the Land Rover. Jiang Zhua, who had been following behind him, seemed to have noticed something. His gaze landed on the figure that was smiling lightly at the boy. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes, his tone still sounding like a playboy. Leave first, I have something on. I won't disturb you from teaching your little spade a lesson. Bo Jiu listened to Jiang Zuo's gloating tone. Her situation wasn't as good as it seemed. From the looks of it, the Almighty's suspicions towards her hadn't been dispelled. Moreover, she was staying in the male dormitory. The Almighty didn't seem happy from his tone just now. As expected. The moment the Almighty came over, he carried her and placed her on his long legs. His voice was slow and deep. Don't worry, I won't touch you now. I'll deal with you when we get home. Bo Jiu replied. Brother Mo, you should touch me now. The driver is here. Qin Mo sniffed the scent of the youngster's hair. Everything seemed right. When there's no one around, it was too obvious what the Almighty was trying to say. Bo Jiu felt that the interrogation would be more intense than the one in the male dormitory. Why did the Almighty have his eyes on her? She had tried to cover up every single detail. Moreover, the Almighty's suspicions had reached an unbridled stage. He called Fatty right in front of her. Help me check the surveillance cameras in number 1 middle school. See if anyone climbed over the wall today. No, you don't have to look for any suspicious people. Just look for Little Spade's video. Bo Jiu replied sincerely, Brother Mo, I don't always climb over the wall. I still use the main entrance. Qin Mo ignored her interruption and continued to order. Send me a copy of the surveillance footage from the classroom, between 7 and 8. See if Little Spade is around. Captain, why are you investigating Little Spade all of a sudden? Bo Jiu was about to reply when Qin Mo's voice rang out again. Qin Mo's voice rose again. She always skips classes. She's so disobedient, Fatty replied before hanging up. Chapter 977. The night deepened a notch. The students of number 1 middle school had just finished their night revision. The entire school was brightly lit, especially the supper windows and small shops. There were many people queuing up. As the weather got warmer, there were more people buying ice water and Coke. Compared to when they first entered number 1 middle school, all the students were freed. The long forest was filled with people walking, and there were also some girls discussing topics and where to shop on Sunday. Shui Yaoyao had wanted to use this time to play a few games at the internet cafe. Practicing her hand speed had become a habit of hers. She hadn't expected to be stopped by a boy she usually chatted with. The boy was from the next class. He stood tall and handsome in front of Shui Yaoyao, holding a basketball in his hand. He was the type of handsome boy with a good personality. When he smiled, his canine teeth would be revealed, adding to his good looks. This type of boy was well liked in school. Hence, Shui Yaoyao hadn't expected him to stop her. Behind him were two of his best friends. We have a game later, do you want to watch? The boy asked. Shui Yaoyao was still holding her book, smiling as she rejected him. The boy smiled. Forget it, I'll change the question. Do you want to be my girlfriend? Shui Yaoyao paused, lifting her head, about to reject him. Suddenly, a voice with a hint of a smile came from behind her. Yaoyao, I don't think Auntie wants you to date in high school, puppy love is forbidden in number 1 middle school. Shui Yaoyao's back froze. Even without turning back, she knew who the person was. The boy who confessed to her looked at Jiang Zuo, who was holding a cigarette in one hand and had an outstanding aura. His eyes widened. Young Master Jiang. Jiang Zuo walked over, a cigarette in one hand, the other naturally placed on Shui Yaoyao's shoulder. He whispered into her ear, why don't you tell your classmates that you can't date for the next 3 years? MMH? Shui Yaoyao's body stiffened even more. She knew Jiang Zuo was reminding her of the time limit of their contract. She couldn't have a boyfriend for the next 3 years, that was the condition they had agreed on from the start. The boy didn't know what was going on. He really thought that she was more sensitive in high school and had to wait until after her sophomore year. His eyes dimmed. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. This was the first time someone had confessed to her. In the past, she had never been discovered by anyone, so why would anyone confess to her? Shui Yaoyao looked up and said, "Sorry," the boy interrupted her with a smile. "It's okay. You want to go to sea university, right? I'll apply for that school too." This time, Shui Yaoyao was really stunned. When she said these words, it was a long time ago. At that time, she hadn't slimmed down and hadn't become an official Supreme Alliance member. She had just returned to school. "How did you know?" The boy looked at Shui Yaoyao, his gaze deep. "The first time I noticed you, you were helping your brother pack his bag. I always felt that you were very gentle. After that, I unknowingly wanted to know more about you, so I asked around." Shui Yaoyao was shocked. She never thought that someone would notice her at that time. Moreover, this person had always been a topic of discussion among girls. The boy noticed Shui Yaoyao's gaze and smiled again, his face a little red. "You probably don't remember, but there was one time when I hurt my leg while playing basketball. I was sitting at the railing and you happened to pass me a band-aid. You even helped me wash my wound with water. At that time, I wanted to tell you that I really like you, Shui Yaoyao, I really like you." Shui Yaoyao's eyes trembled slightly. She looked into the boy's clear eyes. She wasn't like what he thought, he deserved a better girl. At least not someone like her who had already signed a contract with someone else. Jiang Zue stood beside Shui Yaoyao. He looked at the person's side profile, his fingers subconsciously tightened. The frustration in his chest intensified with Shui Yaoyao's reaction, as though he was really about to lose something. He pulled Shui Yaoyao's wrist over, his smile devilish. "She won't go to sea university, she will only come to a university. And I forgot to tell you, actually, we are in a relationship like yours." With that, Jiang Zue pulled Shui Yaoyao into his arms, followed by a kiss, even though it was just a light peck. But at that moment, the boy was already frozen on the spot. Looking at this scene, his throat felt like it was blocked by something, and it was a little sour and uncomfortable. Jiang Zue didn't give him a chance to speak, his fingers holding Shui Yaoyao's wrist as he strode out of the school. Along the way, many people turned back to look at them. "Is that young Master Jiang?" "Yes, it really is." "Why is young Master Jiang here? Did he come back with young Master Qin to give a speech as an outstanding graduate? When did that happen? Young Master Jiang doesn't come here often. Isn't the person he's holding Shui Yaoyao's hand? Didn't Shui Yaoyao do all sorts of shameless things to chase after young Master Jiang, making him annoyed? Why is it now? You still don't know? Know what? Shui Yaoyao's mother married into the Jiang family. Young Master Jiang is probably here to bring her home. Stop spreading rumors." Although Shui Yaoyao really liked young Master Jiang, she never did anything. It's just that her diary seemed to have been leaked by someone. Everyone has one or two crushes. If you continue spreading rumors, it'll be too much. I'm relieved to hear that. Even though I don't hate Shui Yaoyao, she shouldn't have chased after young Master Jiang, the difference between them is too big. Shui Yaoyao listened to the discussions, but she didn't seem to feel much. It was probably because she had heard it for too long and was used to the difference between them. Similarly, she knew that if she caused a ruckus in school, it would only embarrass Jiang Zue. There wasn't a need. It was probably because she had calmed down that she handled things differently from before. "There's no one here now, you can let go of me." After leaving the school, Shui Yaoyao spoke calmly. She was very protective of her hand, not because she was spoiled, but because she had to participate in the most important competition tomorrow. The National League had finally come to this stage. Shui Yaoyao placed all her thoughts on it. She didn't notice that Jiang Zue's side profile was so cold that it wasn't normal. Jiang Zue was wondering why she couldn't be like before. Even when she had heard the boy's confession, her reaction had become the reason for Jiang Zue's subconscious annoyance. He knew he wasn't in the right state of mind, but the scene just now was like a well-edited movie, replaying in his mind continuously. Jiang Zhuo clenched his fists, his voice turning cold. I brought you out to let you know your current status. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. I already know. Today isn't the appointed time, I need to play a few games. As for the problem you are worried about, it won't happen for the next 3 years. Young Master Jiang, please do as you please. He had said before that he didn't like dirty people, and the hint he gave her was very obvious. But Shui Yaoyao didn't understand. She had already told him to do as he pleased, but he still followed behind her. At the start, his expression was cold. After walking for a while, when he saw that she had really gone to the internet cafe, his expression turned nonchalant. He even got Uncle Ian to open a computer and sat beside her. Shui Yaoyao didn't bother about him. Young Master's mood was probably that carefree sometimes. She took out her phone and opened Her Highness Zhou's WeChat. She was prepared to let Her Highness Zhou play a game with her so they could familiarize themselves with the game. The moment she typed, the phone was snatched over. Jiang Zhuo looked at her, his usual demeanor at the nightclub. The person you're looking for is being beaten up by Qin Mo. Are you sending him a WeChat message so that Qin Mo can beat him up even more? The truth was just as Jiang Zhuo had said. Bo Jiu sat in the car, thinking about how to resist the Almighty's beauty and interrogation. As for the classroom, she wasn't worried. She wouldn't act so casually if she hadn't done some preparations. She was worried about what other tricks the Almighty had up his sleeves. The kiss and singing through the mask proved that the Almighty was 90% suspicious of her. Only the Almighty would suspect her. Even until now, Smith hadn't thought of her. There was also the fight at the square. If the Almighty had brought along the special forces from the cinema, she would have been caught on the spot even if Hoshino had been there. Hence, luck was important in such a huge gamble. Bo Jiu smiled mischievously. She wasn't going to admit it was her. That was the only benefit of being reborn. Young Master, we're here. The driver stopped the car. Bo Jiu's ears twitched. Qin Mo spoke faintly into her ears through the windbreaker. Do you remember whose mask it is? Bo Jiu asked in confusion, isn't it Brother Mo's? Qin Mo didn't reply. He glanced at the youngster wrapped in his windbreaker and reached out to carry her into the building, just like how he had carried a sack in school. Young Master, this is... Madame Zhang rushed over hurriedly. She could only see the youngster's long legs. Qin Mo replied, Young Master Jiu. Bo Jiu could clearly hear Madame Zhang's, ah. This time, she was embarrassed. Unlike what Bo Jiu had expected, the Almighty didn't interrogate her immediately. Instead, he cuffed her left wrist to the chair. Then he walked out. Bo Jiu reached out to remove the windbreaker. But the Almighty's voice came from outside. Princess, look at her. Princess looked as though he had been entrusted with something important. He leaped up valiantly, landing on top of her head. Then he sat there motionlessly. Seriously. It was rather heavy for such a fat cat to be placed on top of her head. Princess looked solemn as he sat there, wagging his tail. This was the first time Bo Jiu felt that her appearance was stupid. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone around. Qin Mo had come out because of a call from Fatty. Captain, I just checked and got the footage. Little Spade didn't climb the wall, he was sleeping in the classroom and was punished with frog jumps. Captain, do you want to watch Little Spade do the frog jumps? It's enough to make you laugh for the entire day. Fatty's voice turned softer as he spoke. Even through the phone, he could feel his captain's icy cold aura. Little Spade, what exactly did you do to make Captain feel so down? Was he in the classroom the entire time? Qin Mo's gaze dimmed. Didn't he go out? It should be. With his captain's words, Fatty started to doubt himself. Qin Mo replied faintly, I understand, send me all the footage. Yes. After Fatty hung up, he touched his forehead, which was covered in sweat. Captain's aura was exceptionally strong today. Was it because of the finals tomorrow? Fatty wasn't aware that before Qin Mo's call, Director Huang had sent him a message. It was regarding the motorcycle. We've found out who the owner is, but the car was reported lost a day ago. The person who lost the car is also from the esports industry, but he isn't from Tokyo. He's the captain of the Japanese team, Yusishin. We've checked his background. The esports industry is really different, even the young master of the mafia is there. However, we've eliminated his alibi. He was in a video conference with a bunch of Dragon Mouth's subordinates that day, and the staff can testify that he was looking for his tomahawk. We followed the trail and confirmed that the car wasn't just transferred once, it had been transferred before, which means that he really lost the car. When he saw Yusishin's name, Qin Mo's gaze changed. The further he looked, the colder his gaze became. That was because he recalled the two figures that had disappeared in front of his eyes. They had a tacit understanding with each other. Qin Mo lowered his lids and typed. It's true that the car was lost, but who do you think would have the guts to steal a car from the Mafia young master? Or is the Mafia young master just a decoration and the tomahawk can be stolen so easily? Director Huang was confused. Isn't Z always that bold? Chapter 978. Hoshino saw through Yusishin's thoughts and knew it was a good chance to leave some leeway. I'm not sure either. Yusishin glanced over at Hoshino, narrowing his eyes. If anyone dared to lie to his vice-captain, he would be furious. If you're not sure, then let's wait and see. The people from the Key Case Investigation Unit came today, and they're really smart. They immediately found me. I don't know who gave them the information, but it's obvious that they're starting to suspect you. I understand, I'll be careful. Hoshino's attitude was always the same, gentle as jade, but in reality, he was more tenacious than anyone else. This was something Yusishin found interesting. Tomorrow is the finals between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. As an international team, you and I will be there, we can study Spade Z. Yusishin said this because the Japanese would be up against either Xiangnan or Supreme Alliance. Regardless of which team won the finals, it would be difficult for them to fight against them. They wanted to see the difference between them, and the other reason was because he was still doubting Bojio's authenticity. Instead of looking at Hoshino and not being able to say anything, he might as well use this opportunity to ask the other party involved. That night was destined to be a sleepless one. Too many people were waiting for the finals. Lin Feng wasn't aware of the others. He laid on his bed, unable to fall asleep because he had seen something he shouldn't have. Hence, he stood up, preparing to stretch his limbs. Unexpectedly, while he was walking, he met a girl from the same school. The girl was walking with her dog, and Lin Feng followed her for a while. They chatted happily. Lin Feng didn't notice Yunhu, who was out for a night run. After Lin Feng returned home, whistling as he prepared to enter the house, a voice came from beside him. Are you in a good mood? Lin Feng paused and turned around. He patted his chest and said, Hu Zi, you'll scare people by appearing so suddenly. Yunhu's expression didn't look good. Fortunately, the night was in the way. He stood there with one hand in his pocket. He didn't walk towards Lin Feng. His entire being seemed to have melted into the night fog. His tone was calm. What did you and that girl talk about? You seemed so happy. It's just something I usually play with. Lin Feng didn't really care. Yunhu clenched his fists tightly because he knew that the girl had once wanted to confess to the guy in front of him, but he didn't know why she hadn't. It was probably because of a certain someone's uncertainty. He had to admit that this girl was smart. If she didn't confess, she could be with that guy every day. When the time was right, she could say that she liked him, and the effect would be 100 times better. That was it. Yunhu felt as though something was stuck in his throat. This was because he knew very well that Lin Feng had always wanted to find a girlfriend. Even though he had already promised to give it a try and be responsible to him, in essence, that fellow still liked girls. In just a few seconds, Yunhu thought of many things. When the words reached the tip of his tongue, they turned into a sentence. It isn't just for fun, right? You have a movie date too. Lin Feng paused when he heard this. Yunhu's rationality was already on the verge of collapse when he saw Lin Feng chatting and laughing with the girl. Now that he saw Lin Feng's reaction, his eyes sunk. Do you have any self-awareness that you already have a boyfriend? Lin Feng, who was being lectured, frowned. In order to understand Yunhu's intentions, he downloaded a dating app. There were many people who had greeted Yunhu. There was even one who had gone out for a drink. He had only taken a short walk with a girl and this person's words were so harsh. It was probably a mistake right from the start. Lin Feng still couldn't get used to it. He raised his lids and looked at Yunhu. I saw the messages on your dating app. Actually, do you think that the person who often leaves you messages is more suitable for you? The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw Yunhu's reply to that person. It was because he saw Yunhu's reply to that person. He thought that the two of them had a good relationship in private. If it had been a normal person, someone like Yunhu wouldn't have agreed to meet up with that person. Lin Feng didn't know that the meeting that time was entirely because Yunhu couldn't get it. He just wanted to go out and relax and didn't think much about it. However, he had never imagined that things had already reached this stage. He still said that perhaps the other person was more suitable for him. He was pushing him away. He was the only one who cared about this relationship. As for Lin Feng, it was obvious that he was a straight man. But when he heard those words, Yunhu couldn't help but clench his fists. His chest felt as though there was a rock pressing down on it. Lin Feng lowered his head and said, I saw both of your replies. That person is going to study abroad. Actually, have you ever thought that because we grew up together, you can't tell if it's because you like me or because you're used to me, so what exactly are you trying to say? When Yunhu said this, his throat felt a little stifled. Lin Feng glanced up with a rare seriousness. I think it's really stupid for us to try dating. I drank too much that night. Why don't you change the method and let me atone for my sins? The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw the common topic between that person and Yunhu online. In reality, he and Yunhu didn't have this point. Other than gaming, their interests and studies were different. It was rare for them to be on the same level. It was probably because the older he grew, the more he wanted to inherit his family's company. Yunhu, on the other hand, was pursuing something of a higher level. A famous overseas university had personally sent a letter for him to do research. Lin Feng could even imagine the difference between him and Yunhu in the future. Now, they still had games to talk about. When that time came, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. After all, in real life, two people on different levels wouldn't have a topic to talk about. Over time, they would become like his parents. Even though Lin Feng's family was wealthy, that was how Father Lin and Mother Lin interacted. That was why Lin Feng wanted to find a girl who had a cheerful personality and didn't think too much like him. She would only sleep after eating and occasionally go to the supermarket on the weekends. That was the kind of life he would have. But it was obvious that Yunhu's daily life was much more elegant than his. Sometimes, he thought that it probably had something to do with the fact that his grandfather was gone and the Yun family was still in power. Even though the two families lived opposite each other, their nature was different. He and Yunhu used to be people of the same world. In the future, they would rarely be. The uncertainty of their youth faded. How long could Yunhu's love last? Hence, he was really stupid. Why didn't he think of giving it a try back then? It would ruin their relationship if they tried it once. Lin Feng didn't want to see that in 1 year, 3 years, or even 5 years, they would have nothing to say to each other and be together reluctantly. That wasn't what he expected. He predicted that by the time that person came back from abroad, he would also be living like a dog. That way, the difference between them wouldn't be especially big. Listening to the man's words, Yun-hoo suddenly felt as though he was on a roller coaster. Not long ago, he had finally agreed to try it out with him. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember how happy he had been. But because of the appearance of a girl, he felt that it was stupid to give it a try. He wanted to retract everything. At the end of the day, he would never be comparable to those girls. Yun-hoo also knew that this wasn't the most painful time. After they broke up, with the arrival of graduation, this person would soon have a girlfriend. What he was most afraid of was that one day, that person would hold a girl's waist and laugh at him. I'm going to get married. Whenever he thought of that scene at night, a nerve in the depths of his heart would be pulled. The pain made him want to bend over. If he hadn't tasted the happiness in heaven, perhaps it wouldn't be so unbearable. Ever since that guy said that he would try dating, he had been very nice to him. It was as if they were dating. Although when he held his hand and interlocked their fingers, he would still mutter in a low voice or stiffen his whole body, no matter which reaction it was, it only made him feel happy. It was as though happiness meant that as long as he was with this guy, it didn't matter what they did, including those childish things like holding hands and sharing a bowl of instant noodles. Or when he was tired from practicing his hand speed, that person's head would lean over. Often, he would be the one doing the review. He would lean against him to sleep, just to be able to accompany him. It had been like this since the beginning. But in the future, it would no longer be like this. After the National League, this guy would take over the company and gradually leave the esports industry. Not only would their gaming time be reduced, even the number of times they would meet wouldn't be as frequent as now. Because graduation would mean that they would really be adults, Yun-hoo understood this guy. Since he mentioned it, it meant that he had decided to do it. He wanted to end their relationship. It was obvious. Yun-hoo understood. Because of that, even his breath felt cold. Admit it, even if this person temporarily agreed to date you because you tricked him, he will never fall in love with you. Yun-hoo had to suppress all his emotions to swallow the question of why not try again. Instead, he stretched out his arm and trapped that person against the wall. His gaze was a little low. You want to redeem yourself in another way? Sure, I don't have too many conditions. After the National League, if we win Xiangnan, you will let me sleep back. With that, Yun-hoo released his hand that was pressing on that person's wrist. He took one last deep look at Lin Feng before walking out of the room. Lin Feng was left leaning against the wall, his entire expression petrified. Sleep, sleep, sleep back. Did Yun-hoo want to *CK him? Lin Feng's first reaction was anger. After his anger subsided, he thought carefully about why Yun-hoo would suggest such a method. He had seen other people's replies. In their industry, people like Yun-hoo were rare and would never bow down to others. He had taken advantage of Yun-hoo and now, he wanted Yun-hoo to take revenge. There wasn't anything wrong with this logic. If that would make Yun-hoo feel better, Lin Feng took a deep breath. If it wasn't half an hour, it was at least an hour. He smoked non-stop, extinguishing one cigarette after another. In the end, he straightened his body and took out his phone. He sent a message to the familiar profile picture. Sure, let's sleep back and we'll be even. The unique sound effect of WeChat rang out. Yun-hoo, who was sitting in front of the computer, suddenly didn't know where to touch. When he saw the message, his gaze stiffened. He glanced at the window opposite him, swallowing the bitterness in his throat. The last thing he wanted to do was to be even with someone. Being even meant that both parties were even and they didn't owe each other anything. Perhaps, ending this relationship didn't mean anything to him. Yun-hoo chuckled. When he placed his phone down, even his black hair hung down. He didn't turn on the lights, just sitting in front of the computer. After a long while, he made a call with a hoarse voice. I have the answer to the question your school asked me previously. After the competition, I'll head over. Ah, that's great. The person on the other side spoke in pure English. We look forward to your joining, Yun. Yun-hoo couldn't hear what the person behind him was saying. He reported his passport number numbly and filled in some information before sending it to the designated email. After he was done, it was almost 11 p.m. After the competition, they would really be worlds apart. Hence, he didn't want to have any regrets for this competition. He also didn't want to see that person smoking in the toilet with reddened eyes after losing the competition and blaming himself. That person, when he was working hard and playing games seriously, was more adorable than ever. The night sky darkened. Under normal circumstances, the internet cafe would be open for supper. Usually, at this time, the boss loved to stand in the middle with the air conditioner and order takeaway. However, at this moment, he closed the shop early and was making the final settlement. Before the customer left, he smiled. "Tomorrow is the finals, right? Did you meet Xiangnan? Finally, you have to work hard, uncle." This was the fifth customer who said that. The customer wasn't a fan of Yin Wuyao. He held a cigarette in his mouth, changing his hand. "I will." In the distance, there was a tall building that pierced through the clouds. The Feng family was on the top floor. Feng Yi sat on the sofa, finalizing the next day's schedule and the order of the fans' entrance. After hanging up, he tugged at his tie and saw his brother checking the things he needed to bring: the team uniform, the standard earpiece, and the wrist guard. Chapter 979. Feng Yi glanced over at his brother, breaking into a smile. Every elder brother would have a sense of accomplishment when they saw their younger brother. Ah, this kid has finally grown up. After Feng Shang was done checking, he gave Coco a call. The kid had good intentions. He knew that Coco had been under a lot of pressure recently and wanted to console him. But before he could speak, the person on the other end said, "You don't want me to care about what others think of me, right?" "I know." And. Feng Shang wanted to say something but was interrupted by Coco again. Coco interrupted him again. "And the maneuvering, right? Don't worry, I'm already very good at it. Brother's skills are amazing, and I have millions of fans. Tomorrow, I'll definitely lead the way." Feng Shang spoke again. "No, it's not what?" "Ah, the wrist guard, right? I brought everything, don't worry." Feng Shang wanted to say something, but he was blocked. His face was red from holding back. It wasn't easy for a child to say something like that. "Who wants to talk to you about that? I just want you to relax and remember to bring your rabbit." Coco paused, muttering, "You aren't stuttering anymore." Feng Shang paused as well. Coco coughed heavily. "I know, I was nervous just now, that's why I said so much. I'm not nervous anymore." With that, Coco threw himself onto the bed, his face blocked by the plush toy. "Feng Shang, we are finally going up against Xiangnan. In the past, many people said that Supreme Alliance relied on our looks to win. Even though that wasn't wrong, this time, we can finally tell everyone that Supreme Alliance has skills." Feng Shang didn't know what to say, but his heart hadn't stopped. They could finally stand in the National League to prove themselves. This was something he had never dared to think about in the past. Feng Shang glanced out of the window, the throbbing in his eyes causing Feng Yi to stand up. "It's past 11, go to sleep." Alarm clock. Feng Shang was afraid he would wake up late. Feng Yi chuckled lightly. "I'll wake all of you up tomorrow morning, the competition is at 10 a.m., there's enough time." "Okay." Feng Shang was very nimble when he said one word. After entering the room, he turned off the lights and lay on the bed. Still worried, Feng Shang sat up and confirmed the things he wanted to bring. Shui Yao Yao was in the same situation as him. Jiang Zhua, who was lying on the bed, raised his brows slightly. Even when the person laid back down, he was still holding onto the strap of the backpack. Shui Yao Yao's gaze fell on the logo on the backpack. It was the symbol of Supreme Alliance. A ball of fire burned in his eyes. Shui Yao Yao pressed her hand on her heart, telling herself to have a good night's sleep so that she would be in a better condition for tomorrow's match. Pa. The dart hit an esports poster on the wall. That was the worst year Supreme Alliance had ever lost. Lin Feng still remembered that year. He really cried like a little bastard. It was not because of anything else, but because of the way the man lowered his head. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, when had that guy ever been so miserable? If only his mechanics had been a little better, a little smarter, a little more thoughtful. Perhaps he could hold on until the captain returned. The entire team's pressure was on Yunhu. But he didn't even share the burden. Lin Feng looked at the poster that he had shot. Then he jumped back and threw himself onto the bed. In real life, the gap between him and Yunhu was huge. In the game, he didn't want to be left behind too much. This was probably the last time they fought side by side. He didn't want to have any regrets. He wanted to win back all the glory from that year. He didn't want to be a burden to that person anymore. That was probably Lin Feng's only feeling at this moment. Qin family. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster in his arms. He got up and prepared the things for the youngster. He opened his laptop and logged into his game account. Just for a moment. The world seemed to be boiling. There was a constant stream of messages. What's going on? Why is Almighty Qin online at this time? Is he too nervous before the match? That's possible. My Coco was a little distracted during the live stream today. He must be thinking about tomorrow's match. Who wouldn't be nervous if their opponent is Xiangnan? They didn't know that Qin Mo had come online to give someone a self-made silver gun. It should have been given to the youngster on the bed a few days ago, but due to recent events, it hadn't been given out. If Feng Yi had seen Qin Mo giving the silver gun to Bo Jiu, he would have been shocked. The silver gun had a special meaning. It was a silver gun that Qin Mo had made when he had first started playing the game. Qin Mo would fuse any good material into it. In that year, this silver gun had become Qin Mo's most commonly used weapon until the character changed and the 3000 knife cutting appeared. The silver gun had always been there. It could already be called a treasured weapon. Back then, the materials obtained in the game were all rare materials. Now, they were hard to find. That was how precious the silver gun was. But now, the Almighty had given it to Jiu. Xiangnan's Xiao Sanpang was the most agitated when Qin Mo came online. He typed in the Alliance's group chat. Qin Mo, are you really nervous? If you are, just say it, we won't laugh at you. Because of this, many players in the group jumped out and started making jokes one after another. Qin Mo glanced at the page, arching a brow. He moved his mouse and sent a video leisurely into the group chat. The video wasn't anything else, it was the secret hidden in the electronic igniter that Bo Jiu had given him. Xiao Sanpang was still sitting there with his legs crossed, typing furiously, shouting that he wanted to challenge Qin Mo to a duel. The others in the group shared the same sentiments. They wanted to use this rare opportunity to tease Qin Mo unexpectedly. Qin Mo sent a video over. Xiao Sanpang assumed it was a useful video. When he first opened it, he was watching it seriously. Towards the end, the corners of his mouth twitched. What the hell is this thing? Qin Mo and Little Spade's lovey-dovey clip. It wasn't just Xiao Sanpang, the others who opened the video, including the other teams, were forced to recommend the Mo and Jiu couple. Who said Qin Mo was nervous? If he came out, they wouldn't beat him to death. He wasn't nervous, he was even more shameless than usual. At this moment, Qin Mo typed a line of words. I'm looking at the present Spade gave me. Single people like you probably wouldn't understand. Everyone knew that Xiao Sanpang's greatest pain was not having a partner. Qin Mo's words caused Xiao Sanpang to go offline in tears. He turned towards the person beside him. Captain, I would like to request to keep a close eye on Qin Mo tomorrow. There's no need. Almighty Xiao stood up. Supreme Alliance has a fatal weakness, it is now showing. Xiao Sanpang was confused. Weakness? Where is it? Chapter 980. Weakness. Zhao Sanpeng's eyes lit up like a howling wolf. In his mind, Supreme Alliance was much stronger than before. Especially after witnessing Little Spade and that shameless Qin Mo's teamwork, he felt that he wouldn't be able to stop them. Now that he heard his captain's words, he was pleasantly surprised. However, Xiao Feng didn't look very happy. His eyes looked a little gloomy. Zhao Sanpeng called out again. Captain, what is Supreme Alliance's weakness that you mentioned? Qin Mo, Zhao Sanpeng's expression froze the moment he heard Xiao Feng's name. Qin Mo? That insanely strong fellow. How was that possible? His hand injury hasn't healed. Xiao Feng stood up, his eyes fixed on Zhao Sanpeng. I'm 100% sure now. Zhao Sanpeng opened his mouth with difficulty. But the teamwork between him and Little Spade was clearly incredible. In a 2v2, no one would be able to stop them. Even if Qin Mo's hand wasn't healed, Spade Z's speed would be able to make up for his weakness. Xiao Feng pointed at the map on the screen. Even though this is a siege game, the location isn't fixed. In the past, no one dared to enter Supreme Alliance's jungle because if they weren't careful, they would be killed. But now, it's different. Supreme Alliance wants to defeat us, so they have to drag the competition to the team battle. It's all about teamwork and coordination in the middle and jungle. Supreme Alliance's sorcerer is a newbie. Even though he's skilled, his awareness isn't enough to keep up with Qin Mo's pace. Spade Z won't always be by Qin Mo's side. A wandering hero would be useless if he's restrained. After listening to his captain's analysis, Zhao Sanpeng forgot what he wanted to say. He was well aware of his captain's ability. It wasn't just him. Almost everyone knew that their captain had an exceptional ability to make judgments. This was also why people often compared Qin Mo to their captain. Because, they were truly evenly matched opponents. The computer screen was still emitting a faint blue light. At this moment, a person walked in. She was wearing a team uniform and high heels. She was very beautiful. She had a slender waist, long legs, and a good figure. She was a domineering lady in the esports industry. This was the nickname that the fans had given Goddess Luoluo. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. As she had been playing for too long, her voice was a little hoarse. That person probably never thought that there would be a day when he would need someone to protect him. Xiao Feng didn't say anything. Beauty Luo smiled and placed her hand on his shoulder. Captain, you don't feel good seeing your CP in such dire straits, do you? Xiao Feng glanced at her, his expression indifferent. There's no such thing as being down and out in the esports arena. You can only give it your all. You're handsome, so whatever you say is right. At this point, Beauty Luo glanced at Fatty. Brother Fatty, you're affecting my pursuit of my idol. Xiao Feng, Zhao Sanpeng thought. Damn it, I've been attacked by 2 public displays of affection in one night. These people are inhumane. I thought your idol was Spade Z, Xiao Feng glanced at his subordinate. Beauty Luo smiled. I like him too. Playing esports allows you to gather countless male idols. In the past, I liked Qin Mo the most. His abstinence, TSK, no wonder he was pushed down by Spade Z. He was already at the door, but when he heard this, he turned abruptly. What did you say? Qin Mo is the one at the bottom. F***CK, Little Spade is good. He's manly. That's why you can't look down on my brother Spade, Beauty Luo reminded him. Zhao Sanpeng arched a brow. Don't worry, someone is restraining him. Beauty Luo chuckled lightly. That's good, we can finally compete with Supreme Alliance openly. Qin Mo once attacked the 3 of us alone. Isn't it time to get back at him? Women are the most vicious, Zhao Sanpeng commented objectively. But, I like it. Regardless of the situation, giving one's all in the competition was the true respect for one's opponent. However, this did not affect the relationship between friend and foe that was born in this generation. Before Zhao Sanpang went to bed, he took out his phone and scrolled through his official Weibo. He wanted to see how his adorable fans were cheering him on. Unexpectedly, the first thing he saw was a post from his good friend. It was a chat history in the Alliance's WeChat group with a video attached. It summed it up in one sentence. I can't be the only one being fed dog food. Qin Mo's video had caused a huge public outcry. There were so many singles in the esports industry. Zhao Sanpang would definitely join in and repost it, but he hadn't expected his fans to show their concern. Fatty, don't cry, stand up and masturbate. It must be hard to watch Almighty Qin flaunt his love every day. Don't worry, you won't get the chance. Fatty, I've liked you for 3 years. I just want to ask you, it's been 3 years, where's your girlfriend or boyfriend? Don't be like that, we love Fatty so we have to be considerate. Are there any more videos like this? Fatty, watch more, you can find inspiration. Who knows, maybe one day someone will take a liking to you. Zhao Sanpang. F***CK. Take back that 10,000 years limit. Take it back. Unknowingly, the two of them were trending again. Honestly, the fans were relieved to see how close their idols were in the esports industry. Because only in such a healthy competitive environment would they be able to see an exciting competition. At this moment, in the crime squad, Lin Qintao stood outside the door, his eyes fixed on Director Huang. Regardless, please promise me that the captain will head out tomorrow to watch the competition. Someone has proven that he isn't the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice, right? Little Huang had never seen a person with such perseverance. He had been pestering him for 5 hours. Wherever he went, this handsome guy followed him. Even when he went to the toilet, this kid followed him. Little Huang almost had kidney failure just by looking at him. Kids nowadays, why were they so stubborn? Even though he isn't the culprit, he was a part of the organization. There are many things we need to understand, Director Huang said. Lin Qintao licked his chapped lips. He didn't do anything evil, he didn't say anything even after you brought him in. This competition is too important to him. It's the National League because of Qin Mo and Xiao Feng. Mr. Huang, do you know that he wasn't inferior to either of them in the past? Chapter 981. Director Huang didn't know much about esports, but when he saw Lin Qintao's pleading eyes, he hesitated. Rao Rong couldn't leave the crime squad, he was the only one who knew the murderer's background and rough appearance. Besides, Rao Rong was in danger, the murderer might kill him to silence him. Bringing him out of the crime squad was the best way to explain the situation. Right at this moment, an off-road vehicle that didn't belong to the military stopped quietly beside him. 2 Special Forces soldiers in camouflage uniforms hopped out. Director Huang was stunned when he saw their faces. Why are you guys in the city? Director Huang, what are you talking about? We are humans too, if we aren't in the city, where are we? Magician walked over, a devilish smile on his face. My boss wants us to bring someone along. Director Huang arched a brow. Who? Rao Rong. Magician chuckled. Director Huang, don't panic, the crime squad is complicated and there is a traitor. It wouldn't be safe to leave an important witness here. Besides, we are humane and he is an esports player. Regardless of the reason, we should let him see what he wants to see. Those are my boss's words. Besides, the crime squad can't afford to lose an important witness, so the handsome me will stay in place of Rao Rong. Director Huang wanted to say more. Magician reached out, producing an identification. There were 5 stars on it, the country's special forces. This meant that they had to cooperate with the other party. Director Huang puffed out his big belly. The crime squad isn't a problem, but Rao Rong might not cooperate. He hasn't said a word since he came in, he might not leave with you. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Magician turned towards Lin Qintao. Boss said that as long as we bring this brother in, Rao Rong will leave with us. Lin Chintao was speechless. He was very curious who the boss was. Director Huang's struggle was futile, he could only lead the way and open a room. There was everything in the room, just that it was a little small. Rao Rong laid on the bed, his back facing them. Director Huang called him twice, but he didn't respond. Lin Chintao's eyes reddened as he looked at the tall figure. Captain. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong's shoulders trembled slightly before he bolted upright. His movements were agile and he didn't look like he was asleep. He glanced at Lin Chintao, his voice raspy. Why are you here? I'm here to pick you up. Lin Chintao said as he took out his phone. Look, the official Weibo account has already started posting. Don't you want to see who wins in the end? Rao Rong's gaze deepened. I'm no longer interested in esports. You're lying. Lin Chintao flipped through his phone again. If you're really not interested in esports anymore, why didn't you agree to Boss Zhang's message asking you to arrange for his nephew to compete and make him famous? It's because he still has esports in his heart. Rao Rong paused. Lin Chintao didn't care whether he was willing or not. He grabbed him and said to the special forces, let's go. Rao Rong was startled, he probably hadn't expected the chatterbox who used to follow him around would become so bold. But he couldn't shake his hand off. To a professional esports player, the hand was the most important. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong furrowed his brows, allowing them to drag him out. His gaze was filled with disbelief. After all, Rao Rong had been here for 2 days and 1 night, which showed that he didn't trust anyone. On the surface, he appeared refined, but just a look at his emotionless eyes showed that he had never tried to accept anyone. It was probably related to his past. Director Huang had seen Rao Rong in his youth. He had been as dazzling as the sun, but now, he was like water in a deep pond, separated by a layer of cold fog. Not many people could get close to him. Magician laughed, locking himself up. He turned to Director Huang. Our boss didn't guess wrongly, did he? Director Huang didn't want to see him again, intending to slam the door shut. Wait a minute. Magician arched a brow. Order a takeaway for me. You guys don't have any good food here, I'm going to die in the line of duty. Director Huang thought to himself, how can I order takeaway when my witness is gone? How can you be so optimistic? He rejected the order decisively. After slamming the door shut, the resentment in his heart dissipated. Magician laughed lightly, caressing the bridge of his nose. He glanced over and pressed down on his earpiece. Young master, everything has been arranged according to your instructions. Do your best for tomorrow's competition. Your voice is too cheap. Qin Mo's voice was calm as he hung up. Magician. How could I be despised by my boss for a mission in the middle of the night? That boy must be beside him. Magician's guess was right on this point. Qin Mo walked to the large bed not far away. He looked at the furry head hidden in the quilt and smirked. Then he bent down and lifted the person's chin. He kissed the face that he loved and hated at the same time. The next day, Feng Yi woke up earlier than anyone else, making phone calls to wake her up. When he called, the youngster opened her eyes, caressing her messy silver hair. She stretched lazily before standing up and placing the phone on her ear. Hello. Little Spade, it's time to wake up. Feng Yi was indeed a qualified manager, putting on his smiling face early in the morning. Bo Jiu yawned, glancing at the Almighty who was still on the bed. She replied devilishly, he's already awake. The sight of the Almighty lying on the bed made her heart itch to bully him. His thick lashes were the same as when he had been young. All right. Feng Yi smiled. Let's meet at the entrance of the club in an hour. All right. Bo Jiu reached for her trousers. They were wrinkled and couldn't be worn anymore. She couldn't help but feel troubled. Just as she was hesitating if she should take a shower, another phone rang. This time, it was from the Almighty. Bojio hadn't intended to pick up the call for the Almighty, but when she saw that it was Feng Yi, she lifted her lips and answered. Hello. Feng Yi. His first reaction was to check if he had pressed the repeat button. No, it was indeed young Master Qin. Bojio admired Feng Yi's pause and was about to laugh. Chapter 982. Bojio didn't react. On the other end of the line, Feng Yi's lips started to twitch. Bastard. He had been fed a huge mouthful of dog food so early in the morning. This world. Feng Yi didn't want to say anything else and hung up decisively. Bojio heard the busy tone and glanced over. Brother Mo, you seem to have frightened her. Qin Mo arched a brow, sweeping the screen before reaching for his phone. Just as he was about to reach for it, the person in his arms pushed him into the blanket. Qin Mo's fingers stilled, watching the silver-haired youngster with bright eyes and a smile on her face. That furry head and 2 tufts of hair arched up like 2 ears. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like his cat. All it lacked was a tail behind it that could be wagged here and there. But after a night of sleep, she had become bolder. What are you doing? Qin Mo allowed the youngster to press against his chest, his elegant and handsome face unchanged. Bojio didn't intend to do anything, she just stared at the Almighty who had just woken up. She wanted to pounce on him. Her childhood habits were rather harmful and she couldn't restrain herself. If it was any other day, I would be at your mercy, but not today. Qin Mo removed her hand, his tone calm as though he was talking to Princess. Go wash up, don't be so ferocious early in the morning. Bojio. Ferocious? Her. With that, Qin Mo stood up, put on his trousers and walked towards the door. I'll go get my clothes. Bojio draped the blanket over her body, crossing her long legs as she sat on the bed. She watched the Almighty's erect upper body, looking as though he wasn't interested in her. She pursed her lips stubbornly. The princess arrogantly strolled back and forth in front of her, as if saying, You've finally been abandoned by your master. Bojio arched a brow, tugging on Princess's tail. Even if she couldn't handle the Almighty, she could still handle a cat. When Qin Mo took the uniform from Madame Zhang, the image of the youngster pouncing on him was still fresh in his mind. For some reason, he felt that this scene was very familiar. Qin Mo didn't know if it was because he liked her too much that he kept thinking about her when she was young. As usual, Auntie Zhang made a Chinese-style breakfast that both of them liked. It was very nutritious. He didn't eat much as most of it went into her stomach. Before he left, he pulled her over, reaching out to pull her collar up, covering her neck. That was when Bojio noticed the hickeys, her ears burning. But she also noticed that every time the Almighty tidied her clothes, his side profile would always be gentle. It seemed like he had been like this since he was young. What do you mean you've been like this since you were young? Qin Mo glanced sideways at the youngster's face, his brows furrowing slightly. Bojio didn't expect to blurt out the words she wanted to say. She tilted her head and asked, Are you trying to say that Brother Mo has always been good at dressing people? I didn't wear it for anyone. Qin Mo retracted his hand and looked at the youngster with it in his pocket. Bojio didn't say anything. She thought to herself, where did the little puppy who liked to help her put on clothes come from? Of course, she wouldn't tell the Almighty that. At this moment, Qin Mo suddenly asked, Speaking of which, did we meet when we were young? Chapter 983. I didn't just see you, I slept with you. Do you know that? With Bojio's unrestrained personality, she would have said it a long time ago if she hadn't been worried. Bojio was afraid she would say too much at the mention of their childhood. She tilted her head and pretended to tidy her sleeves. Her silver hair fell down, concealing her expression. No. Is that so? Qin Mo watched the youngster, a hint of a smile on his face as he brushed her fringe. No. Why are you so depressed? It seems like you wish we had met when we were younger. Bojo didn't know how to reply. She wanted him to remember her if he could, but she was also worried that the Almighty would recall something and expose her. What a worrisome world. Ha, why are you getting more depressed? Chin Mo glanced at her, his lips curved upwards as he reached out to caress her furry head. Bojo glanced up, giving him 5 words. Baby, don't speak. Chin Mo. Bow. Bay? Young Master Chin narrowed his eyes. What kind of a dress was that? Bojo loved watching the Almighty wake up. Noble, restrained, and alluring. Especially when he was in his uniform, looking like a grown-up puppy. She had to touch the face of something she liked. Since young, she had had this habit. In the past, she would touch it. Today wasn't the same. For some reason, Chin Mo seemed more and more similar to his younger self. After she was done, Bojo turned and continued to tidy her clothes. That set of flirting moves was done very smoothly and smoothly. Chin Mo arched a brow, tilting his head as though he was breaking into a laugh. How exactly did he fall for such a gangster? Bojo didn't know what he was thinking about. After taking advantage of the Almighty, she felt refreshed. It wasn't a long time from the Chin family's house to the club. The moment they boarded the Land Rover, Chin Mo opened his ultra-thin laptop and opened the hero icon on the screen. Then he turned towards the youngster. Log into your game account. Hers. Bojo didn't know what the Almighty was planning, but she took the laptop over. Her fingers moved swiftly and she logged in within a second. But before she could enter the city, a notification popped up. Your friend, Chin Mo, has gifted you a weapon. Weapon? Bojo glanced up at the Almighty. Open it. Chin Mo's voice was calm. She was reminded of the gold and diamonds he had given her when she had first met him. As expected, the world of the rich was so straightforward. The weapon given by the Almighty was definitely not inferior. Bojo smiled faintly and accepted. A white dragon spear appeared in her hands instantly. The entire body of the spear was emitting a silver glow. If it wasn't made of special materials, it wouldn't be possible to have such an effect. Moreover, it didn't look like it was sold in the game store. Could it be self-made? Bojo's eyes lit up. She clicked on the attributes of the spear. It had a blood drinker pierce attack and was very light in the hand. Most importantly, it had a critical hit. Such a spear was simply a weapon specially made for assassins. You will be in charge of today's competition. Chin Mo looked at the youngster, his eyes as deep as the sea. Bojo frowned. She wanted to ask why he wasn't the one leading. Wasn't Xiangnan's captain their archenemy? They even formed a couple. Archenemies formed a couple. If she had the chance, she would have to educate her fans that they shouldn't form a couple so casually. Unfortunately, before she could speak, the Almighty reached out and tapped the time on the laptop screen. His voice was calm. You have 15 minutes to familiarize yourself with the weapon. Head to the training ground. Why would I go to the training ground now? Bojo bit on her lollipop, looking up devilishly. Even if I want to go, I have to go to the arena. The FC King of Zone C wasn't just for show. Bojo hid her team's ID. She started a random 5-on-5 match. The system automatically assigned the players to the team. Ever since Bojo became popular, there had been many Spade Z circles, Spade Z Jo, Spade J, or Spade Q in the game. Hence, when Bojo entered, her teammates didn't think she was real. They wanted her to choose a tank. But they didn't force her to choose. They just felt that it would be difficult without a tank. 2 assassins weren't enough to kill in the wilderness. Hence, the game started. Her teammate sent a message. Let's fight steadily. Alright. No problem. But just as the others were replying, Bojo controlled her character and swept across the wilderness. But just as the others replied, Bojio controlled her character and swept across the wilderness. This time, she didn't go to the wilderness to familiarize herself with the weapon. First, she brought a wave of minions. Then she jumped. When she saw that the opponent was almost done with the blue beasts, she used her big move and successfully stole the kill. The opponent started cursing. F***ck, surround him. It had to be said that the opponent wasn't bad. The moment Bojio went to the wilderness, the sorcerer and the bottom lane immediately supported her. The three of them trapped Bojio in the middle. At this moment, Bojio paused in the bushes. When she used her big move, she used another move and jumped over the tower. When she reached the red beasts, her eyes lit up. Brother Mo, this gun kills the beasts quickly. Killing beasts quickly meant that her attack was strong. In addition, she had the ability to drink blood. Bojio, who had been at half HP, was back to full HP after killing the opponent's wilderness. At this moment, the other three chased after her, scolding, "The opponent, aren't you shameless? What's so shameless about stealing the kill?" Bojio didn't forget to type as she danced. This was her usual style of gaming. This is a strategy. F***ck your strategy. After the explosion, they sprinted over but they couldn't even see her. Where is she? Beside her. No one knew who shouted. Then, he heard a sound coming from the game. KO. First kill. After Bojio's HP was full, she turned and used a big move to kill the opponent's main attacker. Then, she used 3 moves to jump over the wall and return to her own wilderness. Her teammates were dumbfounded. She killed someone so quickly. That wasn't the end. After a wave of beasts, she moved to the bottom lane and another KO. She was leading the way so quickly. Everyone was in a daze. It was a 5v5. After 5 minutes, the opponent felt that there was nothing left for him to live for. It was a 10-2 loss. He was pushed out of the city and decided to take a headshot. The youngster looked at the victory sign on the screen. She lifted her head and smiled. Brother Mo, this spear isn't bad. More importantly, the person using it is handsome. Even the spear looks valiant. Chin Mo didn't reply. He reached out and pinched the youngster's face. His thin lips were arched upwards. It was a beautiful sight. But the playfulness in his eyes was still there. It seemed to be saying, "Why are you so thick-skinned?" Bojio didn't reply. She liked the gift the Almighty had given her. She looked left and right and clicked on the white dragon spear's attributes. She looked at it for about 3 minutes before keeping it. Bojio was smart. She could guess the time the spear had been made. She had seen the Almighty's videos in the past. At that time, the Almighty had used this white dragon spear. It was because she knew how handsome he had been back then. His nimble movements. His explosive attacks. No one dared to get close to the silver spear. That was the real Chin Mo. Now, the spear was in her hands. She couldn't embarrass herself. It was time to win back all the pride she had lost. The National League. It was being broadcasted online and offline. The number of fans wasn't any lesser than when a superstar held a concert. Even before the contestants entered the stadium, there were more than 10 media outlets at the scene. This time, the 3-dimensional LCD screen was not only on the inside of the arena, but also on the largest advertising space in the square. It was broadcasting this match. Needless to say, it was being broadcasted live in all the internet cafes. For everyone who played the game. It was a grand occasion. Melon seeds, peanuts, cola and chips were prepared. Everyone stopped playing and looked at the screen hanging in the middle of the internet cafes. The bustling scene wasn't inferior to the World Cup in the past. There were waves of topics on Weibo. It could be said that today, there wasn't anyone more popular than the word Supreme Alliance of Xiangnan. Now, many people understood that esports was similar to other sports. Indomitable and never giving up. That was the spirit of esports. The two shoutcasters were already in place. This time, the shoutcasters were experienced in international esports. As they sat there, the fans in the stadium stretched their necks. They knew that once the shoutcasters were in place, it would be time for the players to enter the stadium. Prepare for the crew. The director stood at the back and gestured to all the cameramen. The shoutcasters wore their headphones. The staff adjusted the volume. The tense atmosphere was about to explode. In the lounge, Chin Mo stood up, his deep gaze sweeping across everyone. He didn't ask if they were ready. Instead, he stretched out his right hand. Supreme Alliance. Victory. The voice came from their chests. Everyone had been preparing for this match for a long time. It was so long that they would recall the days when they sat in front of the computer, their necks and shoulders aching, but they would just move a little before returning back to the game. Just to practice their positioning. There would be waves in their hearts. What they couldn't forget was the failure of every match. The kind of failure where their throats were blocked and they couldn't say a word. It wasn't because they had lost. But when they saw the arrogant person beside them lowering his head and clenching his fists unwillingly, their hearts would clench. They wanted to be number one. At that moment, they had an unparalleled desire to win. It was probably because if they won, they would be able to see the radiant smile of the person they cared about again. How they wished that the person they loved could maintain the appearance of a youngster forever. Even after going through so much, their original intentions wouldn't change. Perhaps this was the reason why they were so obsessed with winning. To leave the deepest memory in that person's life. His failure, you know. His glory, you will win together. Let's go. The two faint words brought a sharp gust of wind. Chin Mo was still at the front. When he walked out of the archway, all the lights were focused on him. The next moment, the other members of Supreme Alliance lined up and walked over. Their black uniforms, uniform badges, and their heaven-defying looks gave them an aura. Bo Jiu was the most outstanding. The fans of Spade were stunned when they saw their idol. They didn't know where the youngster found a black headband. She swept her silver hair back and tied it onto the headband, accentuating her exquisite features. She was as cool as a little prince. The girls lost control, their screams seemingly able to tear the roof apart. He looks so handsome with the headband. It probably isn't because of his looks, but because his hair doesn't cover his eyes when he is gaming. The effects aren't important, don't you think he's so handsome? The enthusiastic response made the cameraman take a shot of the youngster. He was indeed handsome, the esports players of this year were really impactful. Next, let's welcome the ace team that has been the national champion for 3 consecutive years, Xiangnan. When the host said the 2 words, Xiangnan, an even louder cheer came from the audience. The lights gathered and there were countless spots of light. Xiao Jing walked out from the other archway with his team. Beauty Luo and Zhao Sanpang stood on his left and right. Not to mention the fact that any one of them was a top-tier player. Some wore spectacles, some were silent. But it was undeniable. The aura that Xiangnan brought out was always different, it wouldn't be replaced by any other team. Perhaps this was the existence of the champion team, they wouldn't be defeated by their looks. For example, Zhao Sanpang, the sight of him carrying his keyboard was enough to make one's blood boil. Xiangnan. Zhao Sanpang picked up his keyboard, waving his arm. The crowd cheered instantly. Victory! It was the power of the fans that shook the earth. It was obvious that both Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang had never seen such a scene before. After hearing the audience's voices, they couldn't help but turn their heads to look over. Feng Yi looked at them, not bothering to hide Xiangnan's strength. This is Xiangnan, you have to get used to their popularity and forget about the voices before you can think about how to compete. You have seen the matches between Xiangnan and the other teams, the 1v1 is used by them to groom the newcomers. In the past few matches, they didn't even use their strongest formation. You have to force them to use their strongest formation for this match to truly begin. Bojiu picked up the mineral water, tilted her head back and took a sip. She asked, 1v1 for newbies? Who should we send? We'll send a newcomer too. Qin Mo said faintly, Feng Shang. Feng Shang stilled, his fingers trembling slightly, but he didn't panic. A month ago, his captain had spoken to him. They had just entered the regional competition. Chapter 984. At that moment, he hadn't dared to believe what he had heard. His eyes widened and he didn't even stutter. Xiangnan? This is just the first match, if it's Xiangnan. Will we meet? This was what Feng Shang had wanted to say, but before he could finish his sentence, the captain interrupted him calmly. We will meet. 5 words, spoken so casually but unwaveringly. If it had been anyone else, they would have felt that the regional competition had just started. How confident would they be able to predict that they would meet the national champion team? But the person in front of him wasn't anyone else, it was Qin Mo. He had become an almighty at a young age, killed 3 people alone and crushed Qin Mo in the middle of the city. Then I'll play. Feng Shang knew how crazy he had agreed to something. But it was this crazy thing that gave him an endless drive. He stayed in the internet cafe more often than at home. The uncle watched as he practiced his assassin character, smoking a cigarette. If you want to play a 1v1, you have to familiarize yourself with the wilderness first. But you have your own reasons for this. Those who started playing in the wilderness are all suited to be assassins. Do you know why? Feng Shang shook his head. Familiarity, intuition, experience, and judgment. The uncle watched him, flicking the cigarette ash. A team can have many trump cards. It seems like the person who asked you to be an assassin believes that you will become a trump card in the near future. As for who that person was, both of them knew it. Feng Yi was the only one who didn't know about it. When he heard Feng Shang's name, he was about to speak. Bojiu reached out and placed her arm on his shoulder. She smiled and said, Manager Feng, as a brother Khan, you should let go at the right time. Since Brother Mo mentioned it, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Other than Qin Mo, Feng Yi was the only one in the team who knew her identity. He glanced over at young Master Qin instinctively. As expected, his gaze was cold. Feng Yi took a step back, caressing his head. I need to go to the toilet. His assistant widened his eyes. But Boss Feng, you are the manager and we don't have a coach. You have to stay behind. F***CK. Can't you see that I'm nervous? Now, Feng Yi's mind was filled with thoughts of his brother going up on stage and having a 1v1 with the opponent. He really couldn't relax. She wasn't wrong to say that he had a brother complex. They're here. Yunhu's words made all the team members turn towards the special guest. Zhao Sanpang also had a smug look on his face, Japanese. He must have come to watch the competition in advance to guard against me. What are you talking about? Are you fat? Beauty Luo stepped on him, her long legs beautiful. My little spade is so handsome today, I want to take a photo with you, what should I do? Hey, miss, the person you're praising is our enemy. You're so good for nothing. Lord Fatty's words were filled with disappointment. Beauty Luo tucked her long hair behind her ears, a beautiful smile on her face. Let's take a screenshot of Little Spade's corpse after we defeat him. If you love him, let him remember me. When Lord Fatty heard this, he shuddered violently. Indeed, women were the most vicious. The two teams weren't far from each other. When Bojiu heard this, she placed the bottle of mineral water down and smiled at Beauty Luo, a hint of mischief in her smile. That smile melted Beauty Luo's heart. She turned towards her captain. Let's poach Little Spade over, he can be our mascot. I can't. Xiao Jing glanced at Hoshino and Yu Cixin, who were seated. Beauty Luo arched a brow. Why? Is it expensive? That's easy, I can provide some savings, I'm quite rich. Because Qin Mo won't let go. This reason. Beauty Luo was convinced. She turned towards the silver-haired youngster who was whispering into Qin Mo's ear, feeling as though a good cabbage had been stolen by a pig. It seemed like the appearance of the Japanese wasn't as dazzling as her almighty. But it was different for the audience. The screams rose by a few decibels. What did I just see? Hoshino and Exayan. I heard rumors that the Japanese would be the special guests. Even though I was mentally prepared, I never expected the two of them to appear. Gosh! They are the world champions. Godly maneuvers, devilish face, Yu Cixin. When the words left his mouth, the host of the live stream interviewed the analysis expert on Weibo. This time, the Japanese specially sent two godly players to watch the National League. Why do you think so? The person laughed lightly. It's simple, it's for Xiangnan. This year, Xiangnan has recruited many talented players and the Japanese want to see how strong they are. You are wrong, based on what I know, players like Hoshino and Yu Cixin won't listen to anyone's orders. Rather than saying that they were sent, it would be more accurate to say that they wanted to watch. This proves that Xiangnan is indeed strong. What do you think of Supreme Alliance? Indeed, Supreme Alliance is a dark horse, but I think the problem Supreme Alliance faces now is the 1v1. They have to play beautifully to force out Xiangnan's strongest formation. If Xiangnan's strongest formation doesn't appear, it means that the competition hasn't even started. Does that mean the first match is important? Then it should be Spade Z or north of Yin Mountain. After all, these two players are very outstanding in individual battles, especially Spade Z. With the abilities of the newcomer king, he should be able to play the first match beautifully. What do you think? The moment the host finished speaking, a name appeared on the screen belonging to Supreme Alliance. Feng Shang. In that instant, many frowned, glancing over to ask, who is Feng Shang? They couldn't be blamed for not knowing. Only those who frequented Zone C knew Feng Shang. As for the others, they hadn't noticed him. In the past competitions, Feng Shang had always participated as a newbie and didn't have much of a presence. Hence, when he was singled out, there were doubts. Under these gazes, Feng Shang clenched his fists and stood up from his seat. Dressed in his combat uniform, he walked to the center of the room and reached out to take off his black headset. Shui Yaoyao looked at his back view, and her heart felt like it was filled with something. Because she knew that Feng Shang was the same type of person as her. In the past, they had been afraid of everything in this world, as ordinary as they could be. Now, Feng Shang was able to sit firmly under such gazes, lifting his lids to give her a smile. Chapter 985. The player from the Xiangnan team glanced at Feng Shang. From that glance, it was obvious that he didn't view Feng Shang as an important opponent. He had to admit that Supreme Alliance was strong, which was why he had trained for so long just for this match. But he hadn't expected Supreme Alliance to send a newcomer. The player's eyes dimmed. He placed his fingers on the keyboard and logged into his ID. Following the sound of the game's sound effects, both of their IDs appeared on all the screens. The finals had finally begun. At the start, the camera was focused on the Xiangnan player's point of view. Alright, we can see that both players are assassins. There's nothing wrong with that. In professional battles, most players will use assassins in 1v1s. Let's see which team's rookie is stronger this round. Yes, Supreme Alliance is starting to farm. Xiangnan. The shoutcaster paused. He moved his mouse up and broke into a smile. Are they going to raid? Everyone looked towards the Xiangnan team when they heard the word ambush. Following the movement of their gazes landed on that figure and they couldn't help but hold their breaths. The contestants wearing headphones couldn't see or hear the sounds around them. This was fair for the competition. Shui Yaoyao watched as the figure approached Feng Shang. She clenched her fists anxiously. Compared to Shui Yaoyao, Bojiu arched a brow but didn't say a word. It seems like Supreme Alliance's blue beast is going to be snatched away. The shoutcaster's tone was filled with regret. This was the National League after all. This shouldn't be the standard. Feng Shang, on the other hand, was still busy killing monsters. He didn't notice that danger was nearby, either because he was nervous or something else. The opponent didn't hold back. With a wild punishment, he successfully snatched away Supreme Alliance's blue beast. Next, he leaped towards the middle lane and wiped out a wave of troops. Feng Shang couldn't keep up with the opponent's rhythm. He had to give up and clear the troops. After all, the main mission of the game was to defend the tower. This scene made the audience very disappointed. Supreme Alliance's assassins are too weak. Those who come from the wilderness probably aren't that daring. They probably didn't expect Xiangnan to rebel. It's so boring. He's still guarding the tower and Xiangnan has taken down his red monster. If this goes on, it'll be a one-sided massacre. That's for sure. Assassins don't have any wild monsters to kill, so what's the point of playing? Their mana consumption is so fast, but they haven't even killed their own blue monsters yet. There's no point in watching this match anymore. The assistant listened to the commotion and turned to look at Vice President Feng. He had thought that Vice President Feng, who was obsessed with his younger brother, would be angry. But now, he just stood there, looking at Feng Shang, who was wearing headphones. Feng Shang wasn't like this when he was young. His stuttering was not innate, but rather, it was caused by a kidnapping. It was also his fault. At that time, Feng Shang liked to play behind him. He was already 6 years old and definitely wouldn't bring a 3-year-old child along. Hence, he purposely walked quickly and didn't want to bring him along. In the end, when he turned back, Feng Yi realized that his brother was missing. If the bodyguards hadn't noticed in time, Feng Shang would have been carried away by the middle-aged man. They were the ones who stopped him at the subway entrance. At that time, Feng Shang was crying so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. It was obvious that he had been frightened, which was how he spoke. Hence, everyone said that Feng Yi was obsessed with his younger brother. Even though Feng Yi was in charge of the Feng family, the final successor was Feng Shang. After Feng Yi came of age, he had voluntarily transferred all his shares to his younger brother. No one knew that year, the middle-aged man had wanted to carry Feng Yi away. He had followed Feng Yi for 3 days straight and was ready to buy a good price. In the end, he had been stopped by little Feng Shang. Only Feng Yi knew. Feng Shang had told him that there was an uncle he was afraid of. His brother didn't want him to go out, but Feng Shang had found him annoying. An hour had passed thanks to the clues provided by the kind-hearted person. Feng Yi didn't know what Feng Shang had experienced in that hour. In order to keep him quiet, the human trafficker had pinched his arm until it was red. At that time, Feng Shang had hugged him and repeated, "Brother, don't go out by yourself." The guilt in Feng Yi's heart hadn't dissipated. He had watched as Feng Shang grew up. Because of his words, he didn't have any friends and had even lost all his courage. Even now, he sat there in Supreme Alliance's uniform. Even though he was so nervous that his movements weren't nimble, he didn't seem to have any intention of retreating. Shui Yaoyao wanted to speak. Bojiu pressed down on her shoulders, placing a slender finger on her lips, gesturing for her to keep quiet. Feng Shang was still moving his mouse to clear the troops on the top lane. Since there wasn't anyone guarding this side, the 2 waves of troops he brought over pushed down the defense tower. But everyone's attention was focused on the Xiangnan players. No one noticed what Feng Shang was doing. On the other hand, the Xiangnan player noticed it. He smiled, not taking Feng Shang seriously. He darted over, wanting to seize the opportunity to capture him. Unexpectedly, after hiding in the bushes for about 10 seconds, Feng Shang still hadn't appeared. When he opened the map, he realized that he had gone to the bottom lane and was killing troops. The defense tower at the bottom lane was about to be taken down. The Xiangnan player frowned, heading towards the bottom lane. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to capture someone who couldn't even protect the beasts. But the same thing happened again. After hiding in the bushes for 6 seconds, Feng Shang wasn't able to head over. When he appeared again, he was already in the middle lane. It's a pity he didn't manage to capture him. That was the view of the audience. From their perspective, Feng Shang's fighting style was a little clumsy. But from Bo Jiu's perspective, it was completely different. She lifted her thin lips, placing her arm over his shoulder. "Brother Mo, you were the one who taught baby Feng this move." "Which move?" Qin Mo tilted his head. Up close, he looked indescribably noble. Bo Jiu felt an itch in her hands, but she had to endure it. She revealed her canine teeth and smiled faintly. "Brother Mo, be honest. His fighting style is so complicated, it's obviously yours." "Is that a compliment?" Qin Mo watched her mischievous claws. After suppressing them, he replied calmly, "It's not me. Feng Shang has been playing in the wilderness for a long time, he definitely has this level of scheming." Bo Jiu arched a brow. "Are you complimenting baby Feng?" The word scheming was used well, it didn't seem like a compliment. "MMH?" The Almighty didn't give a precise answer. His MMH left her speechless. Bo Jiu placed her hands behind her head, a lollipop dangling from her mouth. The Xiangnan player probably hasn't realized that baby Feng is leading him around the field. He isn't clearing troops. Qin Mo chuckled, caressing the youngster's fluffy head. He lowered his voice. "You're smart. I'm even more handsome." Bo Jiu replied in a carefree manner. Talent and looks coexist. Lin Feng only wanted to change his seat as he listened. This was the National League. "Captain, what was going on with you and Little Spade? How could you be so lovey-dovey in such a serious situation? Besides, he had just broken up with Hu Zi." No, they had just made things clear. Hu Zi hadn't spoken a single word to him today. Even the mineral water he was drinking wasn't the one he had given him. With that thought, Lin Feng's arrogance subsided. It was better not to change seats. If he sat beside Hu Zi, he would definitely be treated coldly. But from what Captain and Little Spade said, Feng Shang had a higher chance of winning. He would have to take a good look. Lin Feng didn't like to see his teammates lose. He liked to see his teammates setting traps. Gaming was really a competition to see who had more scheming. However, some of the spectators who weren't sensitive to data couldn't see it. In their eyes, Feng Shang's rhythm was too slow. He only knew how to lead troops. He didn't know how to control the assassin character. The assassin had to roam the wilderness. Actually, the spectators weren't wrong. If it was a team battle, the assassin would indeed have to roam the wilderness. But many people had forgotten that. This was a 1v1. Besides, this was a siege game. This time, he should be caught. Indeed, he was caught. The Xiangnan player had managed to bring Feng Shang down to critical health. His maneuvers were beautiful and his movements were swift. If Feng Shang hadn't returned to the tower in time to heal, he would have lost his first life. But at this moment, the Xiangnan player suddenly requested for an outside guidance. It wasn't Supreme Alliance but Xiangnan. The spectators couldn't believe the words that appeared on the screen. What's going on? Isn't the situation in Xiangnan doing well? They're just short of attacking Supreme Alliance. Why did they request for an outside guidance? I'm not sure. Everyone was confused. Why did he have to interrupt such a good rhythm? They weren't the only ones confused. Even the Xiangnan player couldn't understand why their captain had to interrupt him. But there was a type of person who was born to be a leader. Xiao Jing sat there. As the third generation of the Red Army, he exuded an aura that couldn't be ignored. His voice was calm, and after the call connected, he asked, "Do you know how many towers you have lost?" The Xiangnan player froze, glancing up at the map. The other party had already destroyed 2 of his towers, and now, half of the towers in the middle lane were gone. Open the page and take a look at your finances. This was Xiao Jing's second sentence. The Xiangnan player switched swiftly. When he saw the string of numbers, he tightened his grip on the mouse. He has much more than me. Do you know what to do? Xiao Jing's voice was emotionless. The Xiangnan player replied immediately, I underestimated him, Captain. My advantage is in taking the beasts. For the next match, I will clear the beasts and attack the tower at the same time. I won't be led around by him. Chapter 986. That was right, 3 years. How many 3 years were there in life? I understand, Captain. That person moved his fingers, switching to a different page, heading to the bottom of the tower to clear the troops. Feng Shang realized that this person's strategy was different from before. It seemed like his strategy had been seen through. Xiangnan wasn't easy to deal with. Xiao Jing looks rather decent, but he's full of evil tricks. Baby Feng hasn't done anything yet, how did he discover it? Lin Feng reached out, watching as the person was about to fall into the trap. That was the logic of losing a prey that was already in his mouth. As mentioned before, the 2 teams weren't far apart. Xiao Jing and Xiao Sanpang heard Lin Feng's words. He turned his head and was about to argue. Beauty Lin, if we are talking about evil tricks, it should be Qin Mo. Who taught your newcomer that trick? It's definitely Qin Mo. He. Help me tell him that in front of our captain, his tricks are useless. Lin Feng didn't hear anything but the word beauty. He pointed at Xiao Sanpang and laughed coldly. Don't leave after the competition. Xiao Sanpang would definitely reply, I'm so handsome, I'm not afraid of you. Fine, I won't leave. Unexpectedly, Almighty Fatty harumphed. I'm leaving, don't even think about beating me up. Bojo. This, Beauty Luo felt embarrassed when she heard their conversation. She held her forehead silently. They had been in the esports industry for a long time after all and were familiar with each other. Back then, Xiao Sanpang had indeed thought that Lin Feng was as beautiful as a fairy and had wanted to push his shoulders. In the end, he had been thrown over his shoulder, almost losing his life. But at this moment, they were still in the competition. Could their habit of quarreling be used in the competition? If you're afraid, just say it. Young Master Lin leaned back. Xiao Sanpang stretched his neck. Who's afraid, come over now. There would be no end to this. Qin Mo was one of the members sitting in between them. He frowned and said faintly, the camera is over here. The 2 of them instantly changed their posture. There was no need to talk about how upright Lin Feng was. Xiao Sanpang's serious expression as he caressed his chin. MMH, the newcomer from Supreme Alliance isn't bad. Bojo. His expression changed too quickly. The existence of the camera was valuable. But the strongest was still the Almighty. Bojo glanced at the 2 Almighties who were still posing before turning back to the camera that wasn't moving. It couldn't be filming her. Since it wasn't moving, it was probably filming the shoutcaster. Indeed, they were filming the shoutcaster. After all, the audience didn't understand why Xiangnan suddenly requested for guidance. After the live commentator's explanation, the people's gazes on Feng Shang had clearly changed. Feng Yi heard the commentary as well. The corners of his mouth curled up, even his eyes were smiling. This was the first time the assistant had seen their Vice President Feng so young. Their Vice President Feng was known as the Smiling Prince. No matter what, no one could tell his true emotions. His fox-like personality was most suitable for dealing with people in the business world. But today, President Feng really smiled. The audience, who felt that the match was boring, held their breaths and looked at the screen. That was because Feng Shang's fighting style had changed. On the screen, the two assassins were like two gusts of wind, fighting in the wilderness. With a single shot, Feng Shang took half of Xiangnan's HP. That person didn't back down, following up with a big move. He retreated and jumped back to the tower, using a health pack to clear the soldiers. His speed was so fast that no one could catch him. The battle went on for more than 5 times. Each time, the two of them were evenly matched. The match, which was supposed to end in half an hour, had gone on for an hour. None of the players on the screen had died and the number of defense towers hadn't changed. Everyone watching felt like their eyes were having a hard time, not to mention the players who were constantly switching pages and maps. To be able to reach this stage wasn't just a test of survival, it was also a test of the map. In other words, during the battle, they had to constantly pay attention to the soldiers on other routes, eliminating them before they reached the tower. When they were clear, they had to be wary of the enemy's attacks. If it wasn't for their hand speed and familiarity with the map, they wouldn't have been able to do it. Some people were stunning the moment they started a battle. As for some people, the longer they competed, the more you realized how amazing they were. Be it Feng Shang or Xiangnan's players. Compared to their maneuvers, their left hands were tapping on the keyboard while their right hands moved the mouse. Their side profile was more attractive. At first, there weren't many people in this world who were working hard. After all, you and I both know that this is a world where relationships and looks are the most important. But when they saw the two of them, they felt that hard-working people were really handsome. The 10th battle took place on the high ground. Feng Shang took the initiative and caught the opponent red-handed. Lin Feng was instantly energized, waiting to see how Feng Shang was going to take the first HP. But at this moment, Qin Mo frowned. No. I can't. Bo Jiu asked. Bo Jiu asked. Feng Shang had already cut the opponent into half. But in that instant, Feng Shang's fingers paused. Feng Shang's fingers paused, glancing at his screen. He was out of mana, which meant that he was out of mana. The game notification stated that without mana, the big move wouldn't be displayed, which was fatal in close combat. Xiangnan's player seized the opportunity, turning to lock onto him, activating his big move. Feng Shang's hands moved swiftly, entering the bushes with a beautiful set of footwork. He avoided the fatal blow. Just as everyone was about to heave a sigh of relief, Xiangnan's player chased after him. He didn't give Feng Shang any time to recover, locking onto him with his second skill, using his strongest attack. KO. It was the first HP since the start of the battle. The atmosphere was ignited. Xiangnan, victory. The first kill was the best way to boost morale, it wasn't wrong. That wasn't all, at this stage of the competition, the death meant the loss of the city. Feng Shang watched as the timer ticked down, his fingers constantly switching the map, trying to see where the opponent was attacking. Xiangnan's player hadn't returned to the city, instead, he had used a wave of troops, using the blood-sucking knife to recover his HP, fighting his way out of the city. 9, 8. 7. Feng Shang watched as the numbers jumped, gripping the mouse tightly, wishing that the time could move faster. Finally, it was 1. Feng Shang was about to rush out when the sound of the city shattering came over. Silver shards fell from his hair. Feng Shang froze in a daze. He watched as the screen in front of him darkened bit by bit. Chapter 987. Lost. Almost everyone was in disbelief. But the competition had ended. The lights dimmed over at Supreme Alliance's side. Xiangnan's side was the only one left. Feng Shang was still holding onto the mouse, prepared to dash out in the fastest way possible. The results appeared on the screen. 0v1 Xiangnan had won the first match. Come, let's take a look at the head count. The shoutcaster was the first to recover. He had wanted to report, 0v1. However, when he saw the data, he was stunned. The head count is 1v1. What was going on? The audience exchanged glances. The shoutcaster shot the director a look, cutting into the replay. Everyone then saw that after Feng Shang came out, his ultimate skill accurately landed on the Xiangnan player. If it wasn't for the super soldier beside him. In this round, Supreme Alliance might not necessarily lose. In fact, they might be able to turn the tables since Xiangnan had one less defense tower than Supreme Alliance. But there weren't many ifs, a loss was a loss. Xiangnan's contestant was the first to stand up. He took off his headset and walked towards Feng Shang. As he brushed past him, he said, "You're amazing." There wasn't any concealment in his words. It came from the microphone. In that instant, the entire arena erupted in applause. Feng Shang paused. "You too." His performance on the arena was steady, like a sharpened sword from a youngster, possessing the stability and sharpness that he should have. At this moment, no one asked, "Who is Feng Shang?" "I've never heard of him." Instead, they used applause to express everything. Feng Shang left the arena, glancing at Coco, turning his face over. Coco had always relied on acting cute to make his millions of fangirls happy, he had never coaxed a guy. Her cute face tensed up, and she didn't say a word of comfort. Damn it! He stuffed his rabbit into Feng Shang's hands. "Here." "No, you don't have a rabbit, you're going to the washroom anxiously." Feng Shang's voice was hoarse. Coco bit his tongue. "Who said I was nervous? Before the start of the match, you went to the toilet 5 times." Feng Shang's breathing was still a little heavy. Coco reached out to stop him. "Don't talk nonsense, little stutterer. I was just going to wash my hands." Bojio watched from afar as the two kids leaned against each other. She wasn't sure what they were thinking, but she knew that this time, Feng Shang didn't need any guidance. In a match like this, a strong self-healing ability was also a kind of growth. Next up, was the 2v2. Bojio glanced up at the screen. Someone once said that Xiangnan's 2v2 was an unbreakable defense. Because they were a pair of twin brothers, they had an innate tacit understanding. In this aspect, no one could compare to them. There was also Lin Feng and Yun Hu. Bojio arched a brow. Something seemed amiss. She glanced over and asked Lin Feng, "What's wrong? They didn't decide the winner on the bed yesterday. Is that why you're angry today?" Lin Feng glanced at Yun Hu, who was wiping his hands with a tissue and making the final preparations. He sighed deeply. "Stop talking, I have to coax someone." Bojio frowned. It seemed like there really was a problem. Lin Feng took something and walked towards Yun Hu. He felt that since Yun Hu didn't want to drink the mineral water and didn't want to use the tissue, he shouldn't reject his wrist guard in front of so many people. Chapter 988. Lin Feng's idea was good, but he didn't expect to see Yun Hu already wearing his wristband. It was a newly bought Nike wristband. Lin Feng, who wanted to take action, could only stand there stupidly with his wrist guard. He looked at the face that hadn't looked at him since he came in. His throat felt a little uncomfortable, and he had the urge to fight someone. Couldn't they be brothers just because they couldn't be lovers? Lin Feng was infuriated. What was he going to do? Take it off and wear mine. Yun Hu glanced at him but didn't move. Lin Feng clenched his fists. This scene was extremely embarrassing. But they were about to compete and he couldn't be affected by his emotions. Lin Feng drank a mouthful of water, lowering his head to calm down before wearing the wrist guard. Feng Yi walked over. At this moment, the manager was still useful. He swept them a glance. The competition is about to begin, both of your problems can be resolved after the competition. I don't need to elaborate on their skills, you should be aware of their chemistry. But since Xiangnan has sent them out, it means that they are getting serious. The 2v2 will determine if there will be a team battle, but you should know that neither Spade nor Chin Mo can participate in this round because in the team battle, other than the two of them, no one else can go against Zhao Jingluo's team. You have to win this round to continue the competition, and Supreme Alliance's hope will depend on you. Understood. Lin Feng reached out to remove the wrist guard on Yunhu's left hand. Yunhu couldn't help but glance at him. That fellow was tugging him and putting something on his hand. Yunhu stilled when he saw the picture. It was a wrist guard from a long time ago. He had probably given it to him when they were in junior high. Back then, this fellow had been doing things that infuriated him every day. He had told him to ignore the girls who sent him love letters. But he had been more concerned about them than anyone else, always sending them into his hands. Back then, Yunhu hadn't been sure what he was thinking, but he had been annoyed. He was annoyed that this fellow was a busybody. Compared to that, he was more annoyed that this fellow had no morals at all. He would accept the snacks that the girls sent him. He wondered if the food he bought for him was not enough for him to eat. He bought a wrist guard, sprayed the word "reject" on it, and put it on that guy's wrist. At first, Yunhu thought it was long gone since a certain someone had fought with him to pluck it. From the looks of it now, it wasn't that he didn't cherish it. He watched as the man put on the wrist guard seriously. Yunhu thought. This time, he wouldn't make things difficult for him. He just couldn't like himself the way she liked him. In fact, Lin Feng was already very soft-hearted towards him. He had always known that. That was why he had reached out for a yard after being given an inch, thinking that he could have more. It was probably because he was always being watched. Lin Feng's old face was a little awkward. He muttered, "Even if I'm handsome, you can't look at me like that. What are you suspecting me of? Let me tell you, I must win this competition. If I win, I'll let you press me down." In that instant, Yunhu thought he had heard wrongly. His gaze sharpened as he asked hesitantly, "What did you say?" Chapter 989. Yunhu glanced at Lin Feng but didn't say anything. Lin Feng was puzzled. He was already rushing over, but Yunhu wasn't going to accept. Seriously, voluntary? Yunhu interrupted Lin Feng's thoughts. Lin Feng replied. Yunhu tilted his head. Are we going to your house or mine? We'll talk about this after the competition. Lin Feng lowered his voice. Yunhu retracted his gaze, glancing at the figure in front of him before glancing down at the wrist guard on his left hand. Next, he lowered his lids, opening his mouth to bite the corner of the wrist guard, tugging it upwards. His handsome face along with his actions sent the fans into a frenzy. This was simply a pink blush. The wrist guard was a gift from Lin Feng. Their almighty Yun had bitten down on it. Even though it was just a touch of his lips, it wasn't any different from biting someone. Lin Feng glanced over when he heard the noise. That was the scene he saw, his back trembling. Zhao Sanpang caressed his chin. Supreme Alliance seems to be good at creating a CP, Captain, why don't we do the same later? Isn't it just a wrist guard? Creating a CP depends on one's face, Beauty Luo replied lazily, poking him with her finger. Beauty Luo said lazily and poked him with her finger. Your face is hopeless. Zhao Sanpang wanted to say something but Xiao Jing stopped him. Xiao Jing stopped him with one sentence. Focus on the game. The 2v2 officially began. Lin Feng, Yunhu, and the Xiangnan twins were all seated in front of the computer with their headphones on. It was obvious that this was a 2v2 that everyone felt was evenly matched. After Feng Shang's style in the previous match, the analysts didn't dare to analyze it casually. The shoutcaster remained neutral. The score between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan is 0-1. This means that as long as Xiangnan wins this 2v2, they will become the national champions once again. This match is undoubtedly the crux of the day. Supreme Alliance probably won't let Xiangnan win so easily. Lin Feng and Yunhu's teamwork is one of the best in the circle. Sending them out is the best formation Supreme Alliance has. Speaking of the best duo, I watched the replay of the last Supreme Alliance match. Qin Mo and Spade Z's teamwork is very suitable for this 2v2. But in this case, Supreme Alliance will definitely lose the team battle. Qin Mo has to stay behind to deal with Xiao Jing. That's the logic. Following the commentator's explanation, the game page appeared on the big screen. Both sides had chosen the same lineup, main damage dealer and warrior. A warrior's HP was higher than an assassin's, and it was also a test of hand speed. Through this competition, we can see that Supreme Alliance's players have more or less improved. In the past, each of them used to specialize in the same character. Now, it seems different. Supreme Alliance's performance is worth anticipating. Be it Lin Feng or Yunhu, they are both unique players in terms of individual and team battles. However, their speed seems to be slightly slower than Xiangnan. Indeed, he was almost there. Not because of anything else, but because of their teamwork. From the start of the competition, the audience had noticed the unusual teamwork between the Xiangnan twins. When the main damage dealer took down the red beasts, the warrior would move first and use his second skill to help. When the red beasts were left with less than half of their HP, the warrior would pull up and move to the bottom lane to clear the soldiers. This maneuver was much faster than the jungler. Chapter 990. As compared to Xiangnan, they were still using the same solo style. This style might be able to balance both sides, but in reality, it had a fatal flaw. Yu Cixin smirked, placing his hands behind his head. There was a sharp beauty to it. If Supreme Alliance continues to fight like this, the competition will end prematurely. Hoshino didn't make any comments. His eyes were fixed on Supreme Alliance. Even his action of picking up a bottle of water to drink was recorded by the media. Unless it was an international competition, it would be difficult to watch both of them appear at the same time. Hoshino remained silent, which meant that he agreed with Yu Cixin's words. Supreme Alliance's double fight had to be a double fight in order to win. However, every team was different from each other. Or perhaps Supreme Alliance had their own way of fighting. But regardless, it wasn't possible to continue with the current pace. However, it wasn't clear when Qin Mo would interrupt the competition to guide them. Hoshino tapped the bottle in his hand. He had always wanted to know what exactly was on Qin Mo for Z to care so much about him. Xiangnan's fighting style is stable, the wilderness is clean, and Supreme Alliance isn't given a chance to come over. They didn't even forget to clear the troops. Since there wasn't any breaking point, the shoutcaster could only introduce the situation. Supreme Alliance is still moving the troops. Let's take a look at the top lane. Are they preparing for battle? The moment the shoutcaster finished his sentence, Xiangnan's player used a big move to attack Lin Feng. The other DPS player hid in the bushes, blocking the way. Such a strong attack was fatal to Lin Feng, leaving him with less than a third of his HP. If it had been a 1v1, Lin Feng wouldn't have lost, but it was a 1v2 and he was in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, there was a healing bag under the defense tower. If not, the second skill of the main attacker, Big Cannon, would have sent him back to the city with low HP. Beautiful. The shoutcaster said. It's a pity they didn't manage to take the first HP. Xiangnan's main attacker hid in a good position, blocking the path, and in the later stages, they would have been able to kill him instantly. Now Lin Feng is hesitating whether he should continue guarding the tower. Another cannon shot. This is really when the two from Xiangnan unleash their skills at the same time. You can dodge one of them, but it's really hard to dodge the other. Their coordination is too good, one on the left and one on the right. Lin Feng should have returned to the city to heal himself. If not, if this drags on, he'll definitely die. If he doesn't defend, this tower will be gone. It seems like Xiangnan is going to suppress Supreme Alliance in all aspects. Wait a minute, Yunhu is here. He's going for the back row, what a beautiful move. However, it was useless. It was a 1v2 and the other party wasn't a newbie. The moment Yun Hu arrived, Xiangnan's main attacker activated his sprinting skill. His attacks were well practiced and difficult for warriors to catch. In addition, there was another person restraining him. No matter how good Yun Hu's skills were, he could only retreat to the bottom of the tower. His HP had dropped by half and it wasn't worth it. Everyone realized a problem. The rhythm of the match was in Xiangnan's hands. Chapter 991. The 2v2 was different from Feng Shang's single match. Even if Feng Shang lost, there was still the next match to win. But if they lost the 2v2, it would be the end. At this moment, Supreme Alliance's fans started to panic. Previously, Shui Yaoyao hadn't been able to understand the pressure that Feng Yi had mentioned. At this moment, when Supreme Alliance was being suppressed, the cheers from Xiangnan were hard to ignore. Sometimes, the cheers from the audience could affect the emotions of the players. Hence, regardless of the competition, their mental state had to be strong. No one knew if Lin Feng was affected or not, but he looked a little anxious. Shui Yaoyao glanced over at the youngster with a lollipop in her mouth. Both Highness Jiu and young Master Qin didn't seem to have any intention of guiding them. But this was the first time she saw Highness Jiu watching a match so seriously. Her expression was different from usual. This meant that Lin Feng and Yun Hu had met a strong opponent this time. Shui Yaoyao didn't know much about tactics, but when she saw that her team members didn't even have a chance to get out of the tower and were suppressed again and again, she understood the current situation. In the audience, someone pressed down on his cap but couldn't control his mouth. F***CK, it can't be, Lin Feng and Yun Hu's performance is terrible, I can't believe we lost to Supreme Alliance. Captain, tell me, no matter how good they are, why are Lin Feng and Yun Hu running away? They weren't like this during the single match. The person who spoke was Lin Qintao. He wore a hat to prevent himself from being recognized by the fans. He also put on a mask for his captain. The two of them sat in a hidden position. Even though there were many spectators nearby, they weren't among them. That was right. Almost all the teams were present for the match between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. They were there just for the match, which was captured by the media. Lin Qintao and Rao Rong weren't among them because of Rao Rong's current status. Before the investigation was completed, he couldn't return to the team. Besides, Lin Qintao hadn't forgotten Director Huang's words. Their captain was still in danger. That was why he made such a disguise. Honestly, he had hoped for Supreme Alliance to win. After all, Supreme Alliance was the one who had defeated them and prevented them from entering the National League. Besides, if they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to win. If they lost the 2v2 match, Qin Mo wouldn't have the chance to play again. Lin Qintao knew better than anyone else. Their captain wanted to watch the match between Qin Mo and Xiao Jing. The three of them had joined the professional team at the same time. Even though they were in different places, they had the same obsession. Their captain and Xiao Jing's greatest regret was not able to play against Qin Mo at his peak. Due to various reasons, the former number 1 team in the country had not been able to enter the national competition for 3 years. But things were different now. Supreme Alliance's team. With her around, Qin Mo wouldn't have to worry about anything. This year, Supreme Alliance's was the strongest team ever. If he walked here, he would be broken. He Qintao's would be the Team Lin team. Lin Qintao's. Chapter 992. Their individual fighting ability was too strong. This might be an advantage in a 1v1. In a team battle, Qin Mo would be the one commanding, balancing everyone's abilities. But in a 2v2, it wasn't an advantage. If they didn't get along well, the two of them would be too outstanding in their individual fights and would be suppressed by the opponent. It was impossible for Qin Mo not to know about this. But why did he send these two out? It was simple, it was a gamble. The other members of Supreme Alliance weren't a match for Xiangnan's duo. If Lin Feng and Yunhu teamed up, they might be able to fight, but it was too risky. That wasn't all. What worried Bojiu the most was the rhythm of their typing. Because of her background, she was especially sensitive to the sound of the keyboard. The two of them were so well coordinated that even the keys of their left hands were on the same line. It was indeed a difficult fight. Kata. Xiangnan launched a new round of attacks. This time, it was stronger than before. Supreme Alliance's defense tower is about to be destroyed. The shoutcaster's voice landed. The first defense tower destroyed appeared on the screen. This match seemed to have gone by much faster than the previous one. In less than 5 minutes, a defense tower was destroyed. Was Supreme Alliance really going to lose? The fans were worried. The viewership ratings outside the arena would increase. Lin Feng and Yun, who weren't like Feng Shang. They had been in this circle for too long. So long that they had experienced Supreme Alliance's prosperity and also Supreme Alliance's fall. They had been gaming for so many years. They couldn't afford to lose. Yu Cixin yawned lazily. From now on, Supreme Alliance has to take back the rhythm. If not, this match will be too boring. I woke up early to watch your favorite little spade, don't you think so, Hoshino? Hoshino glanced at him. Yes. You admit it so readily. Yu Cixin tugged his collar, his aura exuding a devilish aura. Why hasn't Qin Mo asked for any guidance? Probably because of trust. Hoshino glanced at the youngster's dark eyes. There was a light in them that he had never seen before. Qin Mo wasn't the only one who had changed Zi, even the other members of Supreme Alliance had warmed her up. Otherwise, the light in his eyes wouldn't have dimmed even now. Yu Cixin pondered over this word. Trust? That was something he rarely got or believed in. However, he was curious as to why Qin Mo didn't move. Wait for the two of them to get used to each other. Was that even possible? In such a short period of time? Xiangnan had already started dismantling the second defense tower. It was as if the two of them had a shield and a knife. There was not a single flaw to be found. From Bojiu's angle, Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot. He had all the energy in his body, but he couldn't find a suitable way to release it. He watched as the tower of his faction fell so quickly. A sense of unwillingness started to gather in his palms. How could he lose like this? He never wanted to see that person's head lowered ever again. Especially when he was about to leave. Chapter 993. Europe. In reality, it wasn't far. It was just a day's flight from Jiang City. But Lin Feng knew that it wasn't the location that pulled them apart. It was their plans for the future and their circle of friends. Sometimes, Lin Feng would always be afraid. This fear was something that he had since he was young. He was afraid that his brother, who was always with him, would one day fall too far behind him. After all, that person was so outstanding, be it in studies or fighting. In order not to be looked down upon by that person, he, who wasn't very smart, started to study harder than others, practicing his skills and playing ball. Lin Feng understood that people could be like that when they were young, doing whatever they wanted. But it wasn't like that when they grew up. Lin Feng didn't tell Yunhu that the Lin family was moving. Moving away from the courtyard was equivalent to leaving a circle. In reality, it wasn't that bad. Anyway, the Lin family was rich. But it was different. The Yun family was powerful and they only had one son, Yunhu. Although Lin Feng appeared to be naive, he was actually more farsighted than anyone else. No matter how much Auntie Yun liked him, it was because he was Yunhu's brother and nothing else. The Lin family couldn't take any more provocation. It wasn't that Lin Feng's parents didn't mention sending Lin Feng overseas. But Lin Feng understood that they needed him to stay in the country. Be it at the company or at home. The Lin family was defeated. Some things would change. Both of them had been eating well since they were young and they were equally matched. Lin Feng was afraid that Yun Hu would be studying abroad while he was a regular at the dining table. When that happened, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. No matter how deep their relationship was, it would slowly fade with the difference in social status and location. Only by winning. That was the only way for that person to remember forever. He, Lin Feng, had appeared in his youth. Lin Feng glanced at Yun Hu. That person was still defending. The second tower hadn't shattered. They still had a chance. At this moment, Lin Feng's right hand stopped. He suddenly changed his direction. He didn't head to the tower to provide support. Instead, he ran to the jungle to kill monsters. Yun Hu's gaze shifted. He looked at that person's serious side profile and smiled. He continued to defend the tower. He had no intention of returning to the city to heal even though he didn't have much HP left. Xiangnan's players prepared to cross the tower and attack. Yun Hu took a step back to avoid the soldiers' advance. Then, he moved nimbly to the bottom of the tower and counterattacked. Of course, this counterattack wasn't enough for Yun Hu to take the first HP. On the contrary, Yun Hu's HP was lower than before. Fortunately, a healing pack came out, allowing him to replenish his HP and avoid the danger of being killed. The Xiangnan soldiers who had just charged into the defense tower had lost a third of their HP. Chapter 994. The atmosphere seemed to have sunk to its lowest point. Especially Supreme Alliance's fans, their voices weren't as loud as they had been at the start. They had never seen the Feng Yun duo being suppressed so miserably. Yun Hu had been guarding the tower and hadn't come out. Even if they didn't understand, they understood that it was going to be difficult for their favorite team to win. Anxiety seemed to be contagious. At that moment, they felt that the Feng Yun duo shouldn't exist. If they had fought separately, they would have been able to utilize each other's strengths. But now, they were dragging each other down and weren't able to work together. Fans were a strange existence. There was one thing that Feng Yi was right about. When girls saw two handsome people, they might say that they were a good match, but when it came to reality, they wouldn't be giving their blessings. Just like now, there was already a small grudge between the fans. They felt that Lin Feng hadn't been there to support them in time, hence, they started to make a fuss. They were also divided into the fans and the CP fans. Actually, Lin Feng doesn't have any special abilities. He's indeed a little fast, but if Almighty Qin and I were to fight together, we would definitely win. But Almighty Qin and I will definitely win. Lin Feng wasn't online the whole time. I don't even want to talk about his operation. From the past until now, when didn't he rely on me to turn the situation around? If we really want to compare, Lin Feng was also brought up by me. In the past, for my sake, it didn't matter how you guys tried to create a couple. But now, it's obvious that Lin Feng has implicated me. It was unknown if the media was deliberately trying to stir up the topic, but they singled out this fan and even broadcasted it to let the audience see this scene. Bo Jiu frowned instinctively. She was angry at the director's actions and the words. Perhaps when some fans liked a person, they would really treat that person as their own family, but they never thought about whether or not they were really good to their idol when they did something. It wasn't a good method to trample on someone to like someone else. Besides, if Yun Hu had heard this, he would have smashed his mouse. For some fans to explode at this time meant that this problem had existed in the past. But Bo Jiu glanced up, her gaze landing on the naive Lin Feng, who was still focused on moving his mouse. She lifted the corners of her lips. He had heard some of the words and had probably digested them himself. Lin Feng hadn't even told Yunhu about the extent of the situation. There were indeed a lot of fans of the couple. There would be a lot of cute couples. Even if it was just a normal interaction, they would still talk about love. Once the fans felt that one of them was not worthy of the other, they would say anything. As someone who had been through it before, Bojo knew their tricks. They wouldn't say anything on the surface and would send you a private message secretly. When she saw the first message, she immediately blocked it. She didn't know what Lin Feng was doing. It was just that she and the Almighty had only been a couple for a short period of time, and there were already a bunch of people who wanted her dead. In the past few years, how many times had Lin Feng received comments like, "You're not worthy of our Cloud University. You're so bad at games, don't drag our Cloud University down." At that time, you're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.